Oh man. Hey guys. How's it going? Sorry, I've got some weird stuff happening in my headphones here. I have to turn this off. There we go. That's better. How you doing, Josh?
I'm doing all right. I was gonna do the what a rush thing in Kenthoven
I
School, but
yeah, oh yeah. Go for it.
yes,
Eh.
what a rush. Okay, it doesn't have the same force, you know.
I don't know, man. I think it works. I'm not going to complain about that, but I will say this though.
The show today is no exception to some of the great work that I've done in the past.
I love it.
I know.
I love it so much.
I have to play it like every time.
People in the
So,
chat are asking how we bulked up so quickly.
right.
It's the gun
So,
show.
I went for a jog. I didn't actually.
That's how it works.
Witch's Hawk. So potential theism has asked here. Oh no, not that one. Witch's Hawk and Witch's Animal. I mean, I guess they can't see the nameplates, can they? Can you see the
Should be able
nameplates?
to.
There they are, guys. They're right there. I hope you can read potential theism. I think you can. So
He
you're
means
good.
that in a kind and uplifting
In
way.
a very, very kind and encouraging way. So welcome everyone to my channel, to a Friday night stream. I'm getting rid of these glasses here. They're just in the way. Welcome, Josh, to my channel. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
So, yeah, this is fun.
I feel like we've got so many things that are just like vying for our attention. I got another email today saying you need to respond to Dr. Ortland about this slavery video. Okay, we're working on it.
Yeah, right.
So, it's funny to say that we're working on it because that's not really what that means. It means like we're trying to figure out when we all three have time.
by all three of us.
It's not like we're having to prep or something because it's like we can just play it and be like,
there's not much to do. I mean, you might have written a book about this subject. I don't know. And honestly, it feels like Gavin Ortland should know this, right?
Feel like he does. Feels
like he might.
Some clues,
but some of these guys, I think some of these Christian apologists I've come to discover, Josh, do take this it's the third command or the fourth command very seriously. Thou shalt not take the name of Yahweh your God in vain. Not that that's us. It's not. But so many of these Christian apologists seem to operate under the very precise ancient Near Eastern perspective that invoking a name carries with it real power. Right?
I was like, where is he going with this?
God forbid some of these guys, I'm talking to you, Sean McDowell, talking to you, or talking to you, Gavin Ortland. Some of these guys just seem absolutely determined to not say the man's name.
In that video, Stephen and the guy that he was with.
Oh, yeah, right. Stephen and the guy.
Whatever that guy's name was.
That's right. Yeah. So, all right. So listen, the reason we are gathered here this evening, it's today is and it's very appropriate, I think, that today is Good Friday. It's the day that that Christians worldwide memorialize and remember the human sacrifice of Jesus to atone for the sins of the world. A couple weeks back, your good friend and my good friend, Derek Lambert at Myth Vision Podcast, made an excellent video documentary here called it's about child sacrifice, and God damn it, I I don't remember the title. I'm sorry, Derek. But he made an excellent video about child sacrifice with a special focus on Ezekiel chapter 20 verse 25. It's really good. He told me that he got some help from Paul. Is it Paul Davidson? I think over at what's the name of his channel? The Bible Inquisitor helped him out with writing the script for this video. I know you're too busy really to watch anything, so I don't know if you've seen it yet, but it's
I haven't.
I think it's I'm guessing no.
Sorry.
No. But it's excellent.
Sure.
It's an excellent. Oh, there he is. Good to see you, Paul. And nice job on the video. It's really, really good. Especially like for a guy, and this is where Derek just continues to impress me on a regular basis. A guy who, didn't finish college, didn't go to grad school. He's got a solid grasp on a lot of the scholarship and a lot of how this works. So, but a lot of people were not happy with this video, Josh. In fact, one of the things that Derek has endured quite a bit of since the publication of this video is he's endured a lot of criticism, specifically for his translation of Ezekiel chapter 20, verses 25 to 26. And, his video got flooded with comments all about how he's just totally misusing the text, and it's not a good translation that he's using. And they keep quoting stuff like the New King James Version of this passage to correct him, to tell him, this is how it's supposed to be done. So there's another guy who before Derek can't be with us tonight because he is with his family. He actually told me that they will be hanging out at the water park right now while we're streaming. But Josh, he did send us a video message that I'm just gonna play if I can ever figure out how to do any of this stuff. This producing stuff is hard, guys. It's just tough. So here is a video message brought to you by our friend Derek Lambert over at Myth Vision. Y'all see that all right?
I can't.
Oh, no, you can't. You can't see it. Let me add it to the stage.
I just want to recognize you and say thank you so much for responding to a response to get more.
Oh, I think we're good. Oh, damn it. Well, that's embarrassing. Okay.
Josh and Kip, what's up, guys? Thanks for playing this.
Yee. What's going on?
I just want to recognize you and say thank you so much for responding to a response to get more attention and educate people on what's going on in the Hebrew Bible. This response, I'm sure, is going to be on the whole Molech idea from our documentary. Thank you, Paul Davidson, for writing that script and being part of Myth Vision's team and helping. I hope people will subscribe to his YouTube channel, Inquisitive Bible Reader. That being said, you're probably watching this while I'm swimming at a water park with my wife and kids, and it's a wrestling tournament weekend, so I'm spending that time with them, and I want to say thank you. Josh, Kip, you guys are responding to ideas, reactions, natural reactions of people who are defensive of the Bible and will go to any length to show and defend and justify slavery or make slavery not slavery, or when we're dealing with sacrifices, human sacrifice, child sacrifice, genocide, all this stuff that we've been seeing lately online. I just want to personally express my heart to you guys and say, I appreciate you. I'm glad you exist. You've been collaborating with me for a couple years now, easily 2-3 years, Kip, Josh. And now you've done a lot of lifting in this arena that makes me feel a lot better, because now I don't have to be the guy who has to try and get the academics. These are academics doing it. So that being said, if you're a fan of Myth Vision at all, if you are Myth Vision, we are Myth Vision, subscribe to Kip Davis. Subscribe to Digital Hammurabi with Joshua Bowen. Kip has a course with MVP Courses. Josh has 2 courses coming out, one on the mythology that's borrowed from the Bible to create the stories of the Bible, and the other one is on slavery. And of course, they have all these books and all this fun stuff. That really wasn't the point of this video. The point is I'm just glad I have guys like you, and there are scholars on the internet. The list can go on and on. Diablo critics, academics, Dan McClellan, Dr. Jennifer Bird, that are bringing, and the list can go on and on, that are bringing what critical scholarship has noticed for centuries now and are noticing currently from research. I'm just very thankful because I never had this opportunity to be taught this. No one was teaching this material to me when I was still a Christian. So whatever you believe at the end of the day, put it aside. I think it's important to highlight and recognize these things. And you guys are putting magnifying glasses onto the text, the sources, the textual tradition. What is the language saying? And then we can interpret. So I might be tuning in while I'm at the water park, just because I'm thrilled to see what you produce, Kip and Josh. And we at Myth Vision want to thank you. Paul Davidson, Kip Davis, Joshua Bowen, and all of the team of brilliant scholars online that are trying to challenge and flex a little bit of thinking critically on these ancient, amazing texts. I love you.
Oh wow, eh?
I wish I were half as good as he is at doing that. Like,
I know, right?
God, I would not be able to do that.
Oh, hey,
He can
there
produce.
is the man himself, eh?
There he is.
So good to see you, Derek. Thank you for coming out,
kind.
and yeah, and thank you for your kind words so much. I know that, like, I certainly my time on YouTube has been in no small part aided a lot by Derek at Myth Vision. Thanks, buddy. So yeah. So, but I really think we need to get into this this topic of child sacrifice, where so many people get some of this stuff wrong. And oh no, Tomer, I am collecting the super chats, and I will read them when I feel like it. So is that probably not the right way to say that? I will listen, guys. Josh is on a time limit. So I will probably save a bunch of the super chats until towards the end, but I'm in for the long haul. My wife is out of town, so I am here.
This is Kip's way of protecting me from the tough questions, right? That's how he's, I'll save him. That's how we do it. Josh has got to go.
That's how we do it. That's how we do it. So, yeah, but we will get to your super chats, everyone. Please don't worry. Tomer doesn't have to worry because he never sleeps. So, you'll still be awake by the time I get around to reading it. So, there were a lot of people, as I said, who were really getting after Derek for his this video he made. One of these guys who was getting after him was this guy here. Have you ever heard of this guy? Josh. His name is he goes by the Christian Road Warrior. You heard of this guy?
Once or twice.
Once or twice. The thing that maybe my favorite thing about the Christian Road Warrior is he got a part in Satan's Guide to the Bible, and that just warmed my cold.
It is no small feat.
No kidding, right? So, but for anyone who's not familiar, I'll just play you this brief little clip from Satan's Guide to the Bible, starring none other than Christian Road Warrior.
He is the most famous of all.
That's
the
Bart
biblical
Ehrman, by the way.
scholars. I give you UNC Chapel Hill's
Bart fracking Ehrman.
Dr. Ehrman's middle initial is in fact a D. Bart Denton Ehrman. And Christians on YouTube, they're in a total tizzy about his books.
You got people like our good friend here,
There he is.
big bad Bart Ehrman. Yeah, you know Bart.
He's been on Comedy Central. He's published over 20 books.
The best-selling author with Oxford University Press.
See what Bart Ehrman says in misquoting Jesus. See what Bart Ehrman says in Jesus Interrupted.
The Orthodox Corruption of Scripture. How about that one?
That book right there, it's called Misquoting Jesus. Bart Ehrman, in high school, he trusted Jesus Christ as his personal savior.
And how's it working today?
He's like the premier attacker of the Bible in the world right now.
Our primary English-speaking critic.
What happened to Bart? Demon trickery.
Gavin, with a clothesline.
So that is the Christian Road Warrior, and the Christian Road Warrior was so upset by Derek's video about child sacrifice that he was prompted pretty shortly right after it aired to make the first of what he promises to be many pretty lengthy responses to this video, and I watched it, and this is what struck me, Josh, is just the errors that people continue to make when they approach this topic. And in particular, so Christian Road Warrior, I was surprised to discover, has been around a long time. He has been doing this stuff on YouTube since 2007, which is wild. He's a graduate, I believe, of Talbot Seminary. He's taking classes in biblical languages. So this guy, he knows a thing or two about the text, about how to read the scriptures in their original languages, and still continues to get stuff dead wrong when it comes to the languages. So this is kind of what I have set up for us tonight. I've pulled out a couple of clips about from his video response to Derek, where he discusses a few of these passages, but I really want to focus in on the one in particular. There's a very important passage in Ezekiel chapter 20, verses 25 and 26, that I think we need to spend some time with. But there are a handful leading into that. I've got a few super chats already coming in, and Tomer's already up my ass about responding to his. So can we just take maybe a couple minutes and take a look at these before we start, Josh?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's do this. Thank you, Tomer, for 6 shekels. Yes, I very much appreciate this super chat. The great Sarah Yaphet, biblical scholar, passed away last night or this morning, and I think all of us in the field have benefited a great deal from her work So thank
Her
you
work on
very much.
Chronicles was, if
Yeah,
you don't have
right.
her commentary on Chronicles, it's immense.
It's very good. It's very good. So, but thank you so much, Tomer, for the memorial. All right, good to see you, Vishanti. My friend Vishanti is in the house. You know, I was reading your biblical slavery second edition today, and I did not realize that Vishanti helped you out with some of the editing for that book. Awesome, that's great. Vishanti says videos by y'all have made my grad level history course easy. Thank you.
It's awesome.
We do it all for you, Vish.
That's right.
We do it all for you.
Hands down.
Hands down. So, all right. Chris, thank you so much for the $10 super chat. In your two's research, have you guys come across evidence that the ancient Semitic people believed that Adam had a physical body of flesh and bones prior to being expelled from the garden? As opposed
contested?
to, yeah, that's what I'm unfamiliar with any ancient Near Eastern idea that he didn't. So unless there's more to this story, Chris, the ancient Near Eastern cosmology in particular was very much about real time and space and physicality. You know,
Yeah, I mean, if you think about any of the ancient, stories about the creation of humans from Mesopotamia, I mean, it's very much pinch clay off, make physical bodies. Yeah, so I don't know that I've come across the other non-physical tradition that he seems to be referring to. So, Chris, if you're still out there, I'd be interested to know more specifics on that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Maybe just maybe just tag me or tag one of my mods, and they can get my attention. But thank you so much for the super chat. Our friend Pat Lowinger from Discovering Ancient History with Pat Lowinger is in the house. Dr. Josh, what is your position on child sacrifice at Carthage following Schwartz's et al.'s 2010 analysis of 348 verns, 540 sets of remains? Any
layers, Pat? Archaeological layers.
It's good to see you, Pat. Thank you for the super chat.
Always poking at me. Doctor.
Doctor. He's just jealous, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Carrie Bronson, thank you for the $5 super chat. Look, I can't be too mad at their stylistic choices. It's a way to claim a cool costume on your tax return.
I have been found out.
It's the bow tie.
That's it.
That's how you keep flush in the bow ties. Am I right?
That's right.
I'm not lying. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for hanging out with us. Oh, here, Chris followed up. I've come across Christians who, when asked that question, they either refuse to answer my question or say they do not know. I mean, just listen. As far as I know, as far as the ancients were concerned, Adam was a physical, flesh and bone human being, the first one.
Yeah, I mean, it is very consistent. Enki and Ninmach, like you've got a whole story about they have like a little contest and they form humans. Yeah, I mean, it's very common. That's what they're there for. Is they're there to work the ground. They're there to provide for the gods. So I mean, they need physicality to do that. So
yes. So I'm drinking tonight. I went out and bought myself a double IPA just for the occasion. So and while I pour this, I'm just gonna tee up this video that we're gonna get into. Friends in the audience, I encourage you to keep your questions coming as you have them, and I promise that I will get to yours, and I won't be nearly as snarky to you as I am to Tomer. But Tomer usually deserves it, so you needn't have to worry about that. All right, you ready to take a look at what the Christian Road Warrior has for us? Shall we see?
Yeah, no, I have to be fair. Like, I have not watched any of his particular videos.
You've not watched
so
any of it? Yeah. Okay.
It's all gonna be fresh.
All
for me.
right. It's all fresh. Shall we see what's cooking?
Let's do it.
As they say. All right. I am going to do my competent best to pull up the video. You know what they didn't teach me in grad school? They sure as hell didn't teach me anything about operating audiovisual equipment and producing stuff from my computer. Oh shit. See, even there I hit the wrong button again. And all right, we're good to go. Here, I've got this broken into a few segments, and we'll just stop after each one and chat a little bit about it. So this is the Christian Road Warrior expressing his great displeasure at Derek's child sacrifice video.
I'm going to show you what God thinks of sacrifice of children biblically. Let's just take a look at some passages first, okay? Passages that he doesn't show you. What does God say about child sacrifice or human sacrifice in Leviticus? Let's take a look at that. And one of the basic human hermeneutical principles of interpretation is that you interpret the unclear passages in light of the clear ones, never the reverse. So if there's something in Exodus that's not so clear, we're not going to interpret the rest of the Bible with an unclear passage. We need to know what's clear first and judge from there.
Can we pause that?
Yeah. That's the first segment. And
okay.
So this is you picked up on what did you pick up on in there?
So
Dr. Hawk.
Yeah, I want to be very precise in my response here, because there is a certain context in which I'd be fine with that, right? But we need to be clear about what that context is. Yeah, I'm on Clubhouse an awful lot, listening in for the most part. And people will ask me things like, what does this passage mean? And I always have to ask, through which interpretive lens? And so if your position on the biblical texts is that this is a univocal ship, that is a single divine authorship, at least via some form of inspiration, then yes, I think that's a fair hermeneutical approach, right? Because you can't, if you're starting there, you can't have a perfect being contradicting himself, right?
Yep.
So in that case, you are sort of forced to harmonize as a rule. So then, yeah, I mean, I think then that's a fair hermeneutical principle. The problem is that's certainly not the only way to interpret the text, and that's definitely not the way that Derek is approaching the text, or I am approaching the text, or you.
Exactly.
Right? Because we're not making that, we're not starting with that additional. I don't want to say presupposition, but we're not adding that to our interpretive framework. So I don't feel the need when I see Exodus 21 and Deuteronomy 15 and Leviticus 25 contradicting one another. I don't feel the need to try to harmonize them, because I don't see univocality in the text. I don't think it's there. So yeah, that's what jumped out to us. So I think as long as we're precise about that, yes, I realize that the majority of scholars would say that there's not a single author writing the Pentateuch, and it's heavily redacted, but I don't see it that way. And so I'm going to go with it, assuming univocality of the text, and that's what's going to drive my interpretive model. Fine. As long as we're clear about that when you go forward.
See, I think the first question that popped into my head as soon as I saw that, and I remember this. Free thinker Tyler Vela just posted in the chat that like this is a common hermeneutical principle that any of us who attended, like a conservative college or a seminary at some point, we learned this. I actually think I have on one of these bookshelves here still a textbook on biblical hermeneutics by I believe it was Moises de Silva.
Oh yeah.
And do you remember that one?
Yeah.
And this was in there, right? So, but the thing that draws my attention right away is who's deciding what's clear, right? Who's deciding that? Is it what's clear to you? Or, can we take consideration about what's clear to me, or clear to a Hasidic Jewish reader, or a Karaite Jewish reader, or an Eastern Orthodox Christian, or a Coptic Christian, or an atheist, right?
Yeah.
Like the text doesn't belong to just one group of people. It belongs to everyone, and we all come to it with our own presuppositions, yes, with our own reading agendas, yes, but these are going to inform the way that everybody understands the difference between clarity and obfuscation. So, and before we move on here, I wanted to point out Paul posted Leviticus 18:21 was one of the first verses shown in the Myth Vision video. That where the Christian Road Warrior does complain about a number of these texts that Derek didn't talk about. I remember thinking, I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure he covered this. And Vishanti also is right on point here. Anyone who says the Bible is clear hasn't read the original languages. Yeah. I think that's probably right. Okay. So are we you ready to continue? Okay. So he's going to talk a little bit about Leviticus 18:21.
Not let any of your descendants pass through the fire. What's that? Sacrifice. Based on using fire to burn to Molech. That's a false god, an idol. Nor shall you profane the name of your God. I am the Lord, or Yahweh. Now that's kind of clear, right?
I mean, it's kind of, let's talk about the clarity or lack thereof of this passage, shall we? So is it entirely clear, Josh, everything that's going on in that passage?
Certainly not. And I mean, not just in that verse, right? I mean, so
yeah.
One of the most freeing things about having left like my former evangelical faith, that the version of it, is that it opens the text up to so much investigation that was not really allowed before. Right. So automatically thinking about the redaction history that you see in these sections of Leviticus, right? Starting off knowing that this is priestly material that's pretty late. So it's going to be responding to earlier material, right? Or I think sometimes responding, sometimes just superseding. These are things that are not like they're off the table in the type of evangelicalism that I believed before. And so you did have to kind of come at the texts in this way, right? What at that phrase that I don't know if you used it when but what saith the scriptures, right? What saith the scriptures?
Nope. That's a new one for me.
Yeah. We said it all the time. What saith the scriptures? And the thing that I suspect where this is going to go, it's understandable why it's going to go this way, if this is a hint of where it's going to go. We can't, just because Sargon's name in Akkadian means the king is legitimate, does not mean that he was a legitimate king. It probably means the opposite, right? you know, the lady
Moses
doth
was the
protest too
most
much, right?
humble man on earth.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like, there's a reason that he called himself Sargon.
Yeah.
It probably indicates, you know, like, well, anyway, so I think coming to the text and anticipating, well, look, the text says in its canonical form, this is bad. That must mean that that's all, like, that's been the case, and that's what ancient Israelite religion, you know, held. But it's just not, that's just not how it works.
No, exactly, and we have countless examples. I mean, I was just thinking the husband of Abigail was probably not named the fool by
Right.
by his parents, right?
Probably not.
Probably not. So, but this passage in itself, just to, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on some of this earlier stuff. I want to get into Ezekiel 20, but you know, this is an invective against sacrifice, as most English translations put it, to Molech, which has widely been assumed to be an ancient Canaanite deity. And I'll talk a little bit about this more after the next segment. But current scholarship on this is really going in another direction, whereby we're discovering that no, this looks like it's actually a form, a type of an offering that was popular, certainly with the Punic people, with Phoenicians, and there's some evidence about this. I'll just mention briefly after another one of these segments. But the other telling thing in this passage, in the first place, probably not a god, Molech, right? In the second place, the way that this commandment is structured, it really only makes sense if like it doesn't make any sense if this is an offering to, you know, a foreign deity, because right after that Yahweh says they've defiled my name and my place through these offerings. The only way that happens is if they're taking place in the Jerusalem temple, or I guess, you know, the tabernacle as imagined by this text, right? And in the name of Yahweh, because that's just how religion in the ancient Near East works. In order to understand the text properly, you need to have a good grasp of the culture and the religion and the ways in which these people, the people in the surrounding regions, thought through so many of these things. So,
and if I could, just so that it's abundantly clear,
please.
No one's making the argument that the text in its final form, or at least in this later developed form, is speaking against the sacrifice of children to Yahweh. Nobody's making that argument, right? We're like, yeah, of course it is. In the same way that no one is arguing, that I know of, that Deuteronomy 32 is actually trying to argue for polytheism, right?
Yep.
Or something akin to that. The text is going to great lengths to, you know, move against that, right? And so this is why when you point out, and again, I understand why, but when he points out, or when someone points out, look, here's a passage that says child sacrifice is bad and I don't want that. Yeah, of course it says that. That's not the point. What we're saying is, why is Ezekiel going to such great lengths to say, you know, this isn't what I wanted, right? In fact, I gave you these things to defile you, right? Like, what? There's a reason he's saying that. There's a reason that the prophets rail against this, to the point that they say this never even entered my mind. So yeah, just to be clear.
Exactly. Yep. No, we good to watch a little bit more here? He's going to start talking now about Deuteronomy chapter 12.
Yeah, let's go to Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy 12:31. He's talking about the people that the Israelites are surrounded by. You shall not worship the Lord your God in that way, the way of the heathen that he's talking about in upper verses. For every abomination to the Lord, which he hates, they have done to their gods. And what is one of the main ones? For they burn even their sons and daughters in the fire to their gods.
So, like, importantly, I'm just going to back it up a little bit so that we can actually see the text there on the screen. That's better, I think. The one thing that strikes me when I look at this, when I look at so many of these passages about child sacrifice is, and yes, importantly, you pointed out that at a point in time, certainly, when the text was being put together, there was universal agreement that child sacrifice is bad. We should not be doing this. It was universally decried within the text. But it's certainly one of the things that scholars are doing when they look at a lot of texts like these is they understand that the writers are either looking back at a time in their own history when things were different, or they're looking at the way things are, now that they want to change. One of the things that Francesca Stavrakopoulou wrote her PhD dissertation about child sacrifice that was published by Sheffield back in 2004, 2005, I think. Excellent work. Really, really interesting book. One of the things that she points out is that these particular sacrifices, these forms of child sacrifice that the writer of Deuteronomy 12 was talking about here, are they're a foreign practice closely tied to ideas about the purity of the land that seem to have been incorporated into the Yahweh cult in Jerusalem at some point, and that this is what the writer is talking about. You'll notice that Yahweh says these are abominations to him, right? The point is less so, well, maybe I shouldn't say it that way, but we often get so fixated on the terror of sacrificing children that we miss what I think is probably even the priority for the writers, which is ensuring the sanctity of Yahweh's name, of his place. So it's more so about ensuring that Yahweh is his name and his holiness are protected. So it could have been any variety of things that that the writers found detestable. They happily landed on child sacrifice, but there were a whole bunch of other elements of Canaanite ritual practice that they had come to reject, that could have taken the place of what's written here in this text. So,
yeah, I've been racking my brain trying to think of a good analogy. Like, let's say you move into a neighborhood, you build a home, and you make it out of brick, right? Bricks on the outside.
Yep.
And after you've been there for like 10 years, this sort of trend starts going through the neighborhood that only the really hip families, the really cool families have vinyl siding, right?
I have vinyl siding.
There you go, right? So it fits. And under the cover of darkness or something, like, you go outside and you like put all this vinyl siding on your house. And then you put a sign out in your yard that says, like, brick is the worst. Vinyl siding is awesome, right? Certainly we don't have any brick, when if you were to start inspecting that house, you would see that, wait a second, like, do the people that live there really like vinyl siding? Yeah. So like, I mean, they to whatever degree it is, they're trying to tell you that they are not brick people, right? But these sort of hints, the fact that there's siding that's over the brick, the fact there's a sign out in the front yard that brick sucks, and the siding went up pretty quickly. Like, these are indications that maybe the person that built that house, maybe they didn't always hate, bricks so much, right? And I think that's
Maybe
sort
not.
of a an analogy that maybe represents this well, or at least somewhat. That what we're trying to do is, we're not trying to say there's no siding on the house, right? We're not trying to say that there's brick on the outside. Nobody's making that argument. We know there's siding out there. We know there's a sign in the front yard that says brick is dumb, right? It's what does that indicate?
I have a sign, on my front lawn that says brick is dumb.
There you go. Right. It's Idan Dershowitz. Sorry, I'll shut up after this. Idan Dershowitz has that article about uncovering the nakedness, I think in like 2018. But he has this really great example. There's where he lives, there's a little shop, and it's called the Wine and Cheese Cask. I don't know if you've seen this article, but I thought it was a really great example. So, like, you can sort of figure it out if you think about it for a minute. Like, what was the store probably originally called? The Wine Cask, right?
Exactly right.
But then they started at some point selling cheese, and they didn't want to rename the whole thing completely, so they just added "and cheese." But you can see that because there's not a cheese cask, right? It's a wine cask. And so you can sort of, by looking at the final form, do they sell cheese? Of course they do. That's what the sign says. But if you're trying to ascertain what it was before that, you can see. Yeah. So
this is what biblical scholars do.
That's right. Yeah.
So I'm happy to see Tomer is also anti-brick, but he's part of the he's part of the marble set. Boy,
this is gonna haunt me, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. All right. Let's continue with he's going to talk now about Jeremiah 7,
to their gods,
which is a very,
and they have these of course fanciful excuses to try to downplay these passages, but let's take a look at them. The hermeneutical principle of interpreting the unclear passages in light of the clear.
Yeah.
And so far we've seen
you got to put that reminder out there for everyone, right? Keep the clear passages in view.
Clear, don't do
whatever
it.
Those
You're not
are.
supposed to do that. Jeremiah, the prophet, chapter 7. And they have built the high places of Tophet, which is in the valley of the son of Hinnom, to burn their sons and daughters in the fire, child sacrifice, which I did not command, nor did it come into my heart.
It's just the sign out front.
It's the sign
sign out front, right? That says brick is stupid, and we would never have brick here, right?
What?
I mean, I think
child
it's just
sacrifice? Me? I never. I never.
The lady doth protest too much. That is the saying, right? The lady doth protest too much.
I think so. I think that's the saying.
Clearly indicate Yahweh is against child sacrifice, right? Clear. And you interpret the unclear passages in light of the clear, because it's kind of common sense. How are you going to interpret any document if it's not clear enough for you to make a judgment and then take an unclear passage and try to interpret for the rest? No, you have to interpret in light of the clear anything that might be unclear. All right.
To be fair, I mean, sorry, I don't mean to keep jumping in.
No.
But to be fair, if you're talking about like within a section it's relatively secure that the same person is writing this. Fine. Like, I agree. Like, you know, there are some places like in pre-Testament.
That is an underrated comment. I'm sorry. Well done, Jennifer Silves, and it's good to see you. Sorry, Josh, you were saying.
No, so like if you're trying to ascertain what Ivri means, right? There are going to be some places in the text where it's like, what does it mean? What is it? This is how philology is done. Certainly, we do this. But it's not devoid of the context of the writer. You can't just say, oh, well, this appears this way in Chronicles, so we should be able to go back to Exodus 15 and read that meaning back into it. I mean, like, it doesn't work that way. Good. I'm glad that I did. That makes
so
me feel good.
there's a backstory to that. I won't go into it, but there's a story behind that, Josh.
Oh gosh.
But
anyway,
good for you. Sorry. You were making an excellent point. And I wrecked it.
No, it's fine.
Sorry. So listen, this passage in Jeremiah is near and dear to my heart. You may have heard I did some PhD work in Jeremiah, and I spent some time working on Jeremiah in my second postdoc as well. And I'm convinced that this particular section here, starting in Jeremiah chapter 7, verse 28, and going all the way through chapter 8, verse 3, is a secondary edition. And I think it's pretty late that, you know, this is a text that may not have even been included in a manuscript until like the late 3rd century. So I won't bore you with the details, but it's pretty cool. In the sense of and there's some manuscript stuff behind this. There's one of my favorite manuscripts from the Dead Sea Scrolls actually has this whole chunk as a secondary edition that appears in the margin, right? And then if you read the text without it, it makes very good sense. It makes perfect sense. Anyways, these are all things that we need to factor into how we're reading these texts, right? So one of the things, and our friend Pat has asked, in addition to child sacrifice. Oh, not that one. There was another one here. Can we comment a bit deeper on the snarkiology? So listen, one of the reasons why scholars tend to think that the Molech ritual in particular was a ritual and not an offering to a specific deity, and one is because of some of the archaeological work that's taken place over the course of the last 100 years. There have been excavations at Carthage, a Punic site from that was active between like the 7th and the 2nd century, I believe, BC, which looks like it. I think all scholars are agreed now that this was a site where child sacrifices were performed. And importantly, we have inscriptions which contain this expression of people offering Molech sacrifices, a type of offering to their god, which involved the slaughter of children, of infants or babies. But in the like since Carthage, there have been a whole bunch of these sites discovered all around the Mediterranean, dating between the 8th and the 1st century BCE. So it's the archaeology behind this shows pretty clearly that this is a type of ritual. And when Jeremiah is talking about the Tophet, there that people were offering their sacrifices at the Tophet, these Molech sacrifices. This is the name that has been adopted by scholars for these types of Punic sites, that a Tophet was a specific ritual site at which you performed these types of rituals. So it seems, although there's been some suggestion of the existence of Tophets in Israel, lots of the evidence for those is a bit sketchy. Heath Durrell's book, Child Sacrifice in Ancient Israel, is, in my opinion, it's the best study on this topic. And he departs from Stavrokopoulou in a few places, and I think he takes a more sober-minded approach to this topic that I do appreciate. Not that she's not sober-minded, don't get me wrong in saying that, but I he has, in his assessment in particular of the archaeology in Syro-Palestine, I think he's done really well to say, several of these sites that have been proposed as possible Tophets, where child sacrifices were performed in Israel, are not all that secure. However, we have all these other ones around the Mediterranean. So I wanted to give people some of that background. Thank you for the comment, Pat.
And just real quick, in volume 1, I have an archaeology chapter, and one of the things that I do is like a test case is child sacrifice.
Nice.
So just so people know, I'll just read this half a paragraph. That means that the word MLK, Molech, did not refer to a deity, but to a type of sacrifice. This was confirmed by the appearance of Adam following Molech. See the inscription above, and the inscription above is to the Lord, to Baal Hamon, a Molech Adam, the vow which Baal Pados, son of Magon, vowed. The word Adam means man or human. The word Amar means sheep, so a Molech Amar means a sacrifice of a sheep. Thus, as we see above, a Molech Adam would ostensibly mean a sacrifice of a human. So it's just it's a type of sacrifice, is the argument.
It's been, I know some scholars have suggested that a Molech Adam is a sacrifice by a human, but of course that doesn't make sense because sheep don't offer
sacrifice by a sheep.
And also it's one of those things like a sacrifice by a human being. Okay. Is there another kind?
Gosh,
I know. Anyways, let's move on because we're not at Ezekiel 20 yet. So next we have Exodus 22, 28 to 29.
So now we'll go back to the Myth Vision podcast and take a look at the foolishness.
One of these passages is Exodus 22, verses 28 and 29.
You shall not delay to make offerings from your fullness of the grape harvest and from your outflow of the presses. The firstborn of your sons you will give to me, just as you will do with your oxen and with your sheep. 7 days he or it shall remain with his or its mother. On the 8th day you shall give he or it to me.
As Stavrokopoulou points out, human firstborn are distinguished from animal firstborn here, but not differentiated. As the text plainly reads, the same sacrificial outcome applies to both. In contrast, Exodus 13:13 and Exodus 34:20 command similar sacrifices, but require the human child to be redeemed or rescued.
Now, it's good that this point was made, but again, that text, and we can take a look at it, but that text doesn't say that. And again, remember the clear passages that Yahweh said not to do those things? So it's obvious that Exodus 22 cannot be saying to do what God has already said not to do. The ridiculousness of this is just, and dishonesty is just beyond the pale. Here's the text. See, the firstborn of your sons you shall give to me. Now, what's interesting is what this text does not say. What it does not say is you shall give to me in burnt offering. It doesn't say that, does it? No, it doesn't say that. You have to do what's called eisegesis and read that into the text. It simply says that
How finely can you split that hair? Sorry, I'm gonna finish
It doesn't say the firstborn of your sons you shall give to me in offering and burnt sacrifice. It doesn't say that. You have to read that into the text. And once again, you interpret unclear passages in light of the clear. And the clear ones, several I've just read, Yahweh says, don't do this. So it makes sense that this text that isn't so clear is not saying what it seems to be saying.
So
go.
Yeah. No, you go.
I sent you a message in the whatever we call that private chat. Because I'm gonna have to go here in a minute, but
right.
I'm really sorry.
Okay. That's okay.
But because I think this is an important point. If there's one thing that I want everybody to walk away remembering, is that if your interpretive assumptions are there's univocality in the text and it's divinely inspired, and so there can't be contradictions, then I think this is sort of a necessary interpretive approach that he's taking, right? You can't have God saying in one place, don't do this, and then another place saying, do this. That doesn't work if that's your interpretive model. This is why I don't think it's fair to say, obviously, I don't think it's fair to say that Derek is lying. And I think that, honestly, I think that if Christian Road Warrior were to think about this from the perspective that I'm saying it here, he would probably back off of that. I think that he would and say,
I would hope, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Derek's point is not at all that the text is everywhere. Like, he's not saying these verses don't exist. It's actually part of the argument. This is why he brought it up, because most scholars would argue that these redemption passages are in response to the firstborn sacrifice passages, that they're later additions to the text to say, no, like we've got to, we don't want this, right? Which is the strengthening of the case, giving the evidence that is what that section of the covenant code was originally about. So I think it's something that should probably point out. And I'm so sorry because I had your
Can you
here to put up?
Can you take like 2 or 3 minutes or 4 to answer? Because there are a few super chats that have been addressed specifically to you.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yeah,
but
sure.
Thanks so much, Josh, for
I'm sorry that
for hanging out with me for a little bit. It's always a pleasure. So wow, 13 Canadian dollars and 1 penny shy of a loony.
It's Bobby.
Tacit reticence. Oh, you know this guy.
Yeah.
Nice.
Good friends.
Hi, Kip.
I haven't talked to him in a while.
I fear all of Dr. Josh's work regarding slavery in the OT will end up being Sisyphean. I don't even know what that means. Do you know what that means?
Sisyphus, isn't he the one that rolled the stone up the hill only to have it come back down?
Okay. There we go.
I'm digging deep for that one. Sorry. Nobody should quote me. It's not my
I hit the bottom. So there's always some pop apologist who emerges to recycle the same tired apologetics that Josh has refuted. Yes.
Yeah.
Constantly. It's constantly happening, you guys.
But you know what's great is I have now drawn Kip into that black hole. Right, he's now here with me, having to struggle with all of the slavery apologetics.
I got into my very first ever Twitter exchange with a guy about biblical slavery, and I just about lost my
that guy is
fucking mind.
It's
insane.
God, yeah, you should ask theoretical bullshit about that. Because he was going back and forth with that guy for a long time. And then anyway, I
got another one here. No, not that one. There was another one here. Sorry. I've been drinking, so don't blame me. Here we go. from Claude Simeon for $5. Thank you very much for the super chat. Dr. Josh some years ago mentioned fighting to overcome fear of hell. Is this still an issue or less so now? I felt similar, but skip it if it's too personal.
No, it's a great question. I'm very happy. The nice thing about our community is that it's a very loving and welcoming community that comes around you and doesn't tear you down. So I feel very comfortable talking about these things. Yeah, I mean, it's still a struggle. It's still a struggle. My grandfather, I think I've mentioned this, but my grandfather died about a month ago now, and he was like my spiritual father, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
It was a very difficult time. And because it's very fundamentalist part of my family, and again, they all mean very well, but it was still very painful. And there was a rough couple days after that, not only because of the loss, but because it's still raw, right? And it still brings up all those. Like, this is the danger, and I'll be quiet, but Kip, when as you know, when you get to a certain place in like graduate education or whatever, you realize how dumb you are comparatively, right? Because you now are aware of all the material that's out there, so there's no way you can even begin to master it. So you just feel like an idiot.
I just constantly feel like an imposter.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's imposter syndrome, right? Well, that's how you know you've arrived, right? I'm convinced.
Yeah.
But so I know enough to know that I could be wrong about damn near anything. And that sucks. That sucks.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But it is still a struggle, but it gets better. It is getting better. The bouts are smaller.
That's good. It's good to know. So, I think thank you, Claude Simeon, for the super chat. If you need to go, Josh, I don't want to keep you any longer. I just really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with me. So take care. Have a great Easter weekend with your
I'll talk to you soon.
Gigantic family. So
that's what I'm going to go help with. All right. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks, Kip.
Thanks. Bye. See you, Josh. All right. So, but listen, guys, I'm sticking around. I'm going to finish this. I'm going to go through this video without my wingman. Did someone please in the chat let me know if Animal ever did a wrestling match all on his own? I used to watch the WWF before it was the WWE. I kind of had stopped watching it by that time. But I remember the Road Warriors in particular from the old NWA days, but I don't remember Animal and Hawk being separated like Josh and I are. So let me know if that's a thing that's ever happened before. I'm just gonna go through some of these super chats that have come in in the meantime, and then we will continue watching this video, and I'll talk some more about it. Okay. Pat Lowinger, thank you so much for the $2 super chat. Dr. Kip putting the good in Good Friday. Thanks. I appreciate it. I actually think I mentioned that in the community post I made advertising this video that it's going to be good. It's a Good Friday, you guys. And not because Jesus was executed by the Romans. Right? Okay. Thanks for the super chat. Giramide for $10, $9.99. Thank you very much. Says, please apply some peer pressure on Dr. Dan McClellan to join the Dune bandwagon. Oh, is Dan not Dune fan. He's not a Dune guy. Oh, well, I will see what I can do about that Giramide. No promises, no guarantees. I can bring it up the next time we're together on Diablo Critics, which is coming in 2 weeks, second Sunday of every month, guys. So in 2 weeks, we will be coming back with a brand new episode of Diablo Critics. And let's see, I've got a few more here, and then we'll continue with the video. Oh, already read that one from Claude Simeon. I'm such a pro, guys. Thanks, Vishanti, for the $2 super chat. Sneeds, feed, and seed, formerly. I'm sorry, I have no idea what this means. Sneeds, feed, and seed, formerly Chucks. I'm not that smart, guys. I'm over 50 years old. I'm at a loss. Sorry. I've got a $1 super sticker from Metatron. That's awesome. Thank you very much. You are my favorite divine being. I promise. No word of a lie. It's great that you sent me your money. I've got a huge super chat here from Carrie Bronson. Thank you so much for the $50. I really appreciate it. A larger payment to make up for the digression. Would either of you, it's just me now, I'm sorry, be willing to make a video bringing your expertise to a viewing of Has Been Hotel? I could swear I've heard its ideas about scripture in historical context before, but might be wrong. I have not heard of the channel before, but I certainly will check it out now. And maybe I'll see what I can do. Bearing in mind, all of my content is very much about getting the scholarship of the Bible right. So if I see something in there that's useful to cover, and in particular now, I feel some motivation, some obligation to go after it. So I will certainly take a look. Thank you, Carrie Branson. I got a couple more here, and then we'll continue. Ronan of Stag, thank you for your $2 Canadian. So sorry for your loss, Dr. Josh. May he live on for you. I will certainly pass on your message. I'm sorry he had to run in such a hurry. Jennifer Silves, sorry. Tent Maker has great resources for overcoming fear of hell, like the hell test. I don't even know what that is. That sounds very useful. Thank you very much for the $5 super chat. I think it was Claude Simeon who asked the question. Maybe you can look into that. But thank you very much, Jennifer. And again, it's good to see you. I feel like I haven't seen you around in a while, so I really appreciate you being here. And I got one more, and then we'll continue. The Governor, advance payment for Diablo Critics. I see what you did there with your $6.66. Well done. Way to go, Governor. And we certainly will be back. Just working through what we might do on for a topic on our next episode. But if you guys are ready, there's 153 of you watching. I really appreciate you hanging out with me on a lovely Friday evening. We're going to get back into this in a second. I wanted to share with you one thing that I am really excited about. So I have channel memberships now. If you're not aware, you too can become a member of this channel. I have four channel members. Yay, that's awesome. And as a channel member, you get I'm struggling here, guys. Okay, check this out. As a channel member, you get my my custom emojis. You see that? See how cool that is? That one was courtesy of my friend Apologia. This one is courtesy of my friend April Van Ryn. And of course, I hope you all know that one. There you go. So, join today, and you too can use the super fun Kip Davis custom channel emojis. Yeah, Eric Wanderer's got the right idea. He's one of my channel members. So, awesome. If you guys are having a good time, I hope you are. We're just going to continue watching this video here. I'm going to talk in the next clip. He's I wanted to before I bring that up, I wanted to talk about one thing here with this passage in Exodus chapter 20 verses 22 and 23. Or sorry, Exodus, what is it? Exodus 22 verses 28 to 29. So, this is a passage where Yahweh says, you are to give to me the first thing, the first of your vats, literally like your fat and your animals. And then he says, and you are to do the same with your firstborn son. It goes on to say, 6 days it shall remain with its mother. 7 days it shall remain with its mother. On the 8th day you are to give them to me. This is understood by most commenters to be a very ancient instruction about the sacrifice of the firstborn child to Yahweh. The Christian Road Warrior objected to this passage on the basis of the fact that it doesn't specifically say that you're to offer your firstborn child up as a burnt offering. I'm just going to point out that the word there, to give, Natan, is used pretty commonly for sacrifice. It appears in Ezekiel chapter 16 verses 21, chapter 20 verse 26 and 31. We're going to get to those specific passages here shortly. It also appears in Micah 6 verse 7, which we're also going to get to shortly. But in addition to where it appears in the Bible, we also see it in throughout the Canaanite region. The same word, the cognate word, appears at Ugarit to refer to sacrifices. It is also used in Phoenician texts. So it seems that this is it. Like I said, this is really splitting hairs here about what's actually taking place in the passage. One commenter, William Prop, wrote a commentary on Exodus relatively recently. I think it was published within the last 15 years. And he objected quite strongly to the idea that that the ancient Israelites would ever have tolerated child sacrifices. And he called it Darwinian suicide. He basically said that on the basis of the fact, thank you, Tomer. Tomer's always, you're a good guy, Tomer. I give you a hard time, but you're a good guy. 2006. Thank you very much. So Prop objects to this and calls it Darwinian suicide, thinking that if everyone's sacrificing their firstborn child, you could never you could never have a thriving society because of that, with mortality rates such as they were in antiquity. But this is kind of actually the point. And Heath Durrell has written pretty extensively, multiple pages in his book, addressing this specific concern of William Prop's and showing that really this is not an issue. And I'll say one more thing about this. You'll notice that in that passage, it specifies that the animal or the child is to remain with its mother for 7 days, and then you're to give it to Yahweh on the 8th day. Now, within our modern world of advanced medical care, this might seem like not a big deal. But in the ancient world, where life expectancy was short, where childbirth was dangerous, and in particular in which most children, most people died within the first few months or couple of years of their life. The fact of the matter is, if you remove a child from its mother after 7 days, the child is going to die in this ancient context. So the only way that this legislation makes any sense is if this is in fact an instruction for child sacrifice. On that point, I am going to continue with the video here. And now we're getting into the meat of it. And it's too bad. It's too bad Josh had to go, because we are now getting into what I really wanted to spend some time talking about, which is Ezekiel chapter 20. Let's see what the Christian Road Warrior has to say about Ezekiel chapter 20.
An important passage here is the one we quoted earlier from Ezekiel. The context is a passage in which the prophet Ezekiel, speaking on behalf of Yahweh, describes how the Israelites had to be punished for their wickedness after they were brought up out of Egypt.
I gave the Israelites statutes that were not good and ordinances by which they could not live. I defiled them through their very gifts, in their offering up all their firstborn, in order that I might horrify them, so that they might know that I am Yahweh.
It is clear that the Hebrew vocabulary used here, particularly the phrase passing over, is distinctive language referring to sacrifice. And according to Stavrakopoulos, it
leaves little room for doubt that Yahweh was believed to have legislated for child sacrifice.
Here is how I'm going to show you how.
So, listen, I'm just going to say this. I love Derek's video. It's an excellent presentation. But that AI generated Francesca Stavrakopoulou voice, it was just distracting to me. I'm sorry, Derek. I've told him this, by the way. So, but yeah, it just sounds so weird to me. Sorry.
Utterly ridiculous, that is. Now, Derek talks about context, but doesn't actually give you the actual context. Because that verse, and I've seen this before, those verses he read are taken out of context, and the full understanding of what's happening is not being given to you. Let me show you that, because it makes it appear as if God in Ezekiel was telling them to offer humans a sacrifice. But let me take you through, and let me first suggest, when it comes to these passages that these atheists give you, please do yourself a favor. Don't just read the verses that they give you. Read the entirety of Ezekiel 20, starting at verse 1, to get the full context. And that's exactly what I'm going to do, because it's just ridiculous how people will distort the text and make it say something that it's not saying. Ezekiel 20, let's start at verse 1. So the rebellions of Israel, okay, is the topic.
All right. I'm going to pull that down. So I hope you all caught that. The Christian Road Warrior is very concerned about the context in which these two verses appear, Ezekiel chapter 20, verses 25 to 26. And I'll just read those for you again, so you get the clear context of what he's getting at. The text reads, "Moreover, I gave them laws." This is Yahweh speaking through Ezekiel to the people who are living in exile. "Moreover, I gave them laws," speaking about their descendants, "laws that were not good and rules by which they could not live. When they set aside every first issue of the womb, I defiled them by their very gifts, that I might render them desolate, that they might know that I am God." So the Christian World Warrior is going to object very strongly, to Derek's chosen translation for this passage by insisting He's taking it out of context. And the way that he resolves to show this is to read the entire passage, starting in verse 1 of chapter 20. So I thought what I would do was, and he goes through the whole thing, but he takes a long time to do it. So I didn't want to just play his video where he reads through the text, because it takes a long time. So I will, at this point, I'm going to pull the text up now, and we're going to read it together. But first of all, I want to celebrate because the Merlin has become a member of my channel and can now use custom emojis. You guys jelly? You jealous? You're very jealous? Yes, you should be. Welcome, the Merlin, to my channel. All right, so let's take a look at this text, and I've yeah, that's it. I'm just going to share the Hebrew English interlinear as it appears on Sepharia.com. If you guys are unfamiliar with this site, you should check it out. It's super useful. It's loaded with tons of excellent, useful resources for reading Jewish literature. So let's look at Ezekiel chapter 20. Let's take up the Christian road warrior on his challenge and see exactly how this instruction about Yahweh's not good commands for child sacrifice fit into this entire chapter. All right. And I believe this is the Jewish Publication Society translation of the text, and I'm just going to read their English translation. Okay, starting from the top. In the 7th year, on the 10th day of the 5th month, certain elders of Israel came to inquire of God and sat down before me. This is Ezekiel speaking. And the word of God came to me. O mortal, speak to the elders of Israel and say to them, thus said the sovereign God, have you come to inquire of me? As I live, I will not respond to your inquiry, declares the sovereign God. Arraign them, O mortal. Declare to them the abhorrent deeds of their ancestors. Say to them, thus says the sovereign God, on the day I chose Israel, I gave my oath to the stock of the house of Jacob. When I made myself known to them in the land of Egypt, I gave my oath to them when I said, I, the Eternal, am your God. That same day, I swore to them to take them out of the land of Egypt into a land flowing with milk and honey, a land that I had sought out for them, the fairest of all lands. I also said to them, cast away, every one of you, the detestable things that you are drawn to. I'm just gonna point out, do not defile yourself with the fetishes of Egypt. I'm just going to point out these are the Galuli Mitzrayim. The word Galuli is a construct form of Galulim, which you could rightly just translate as shit. This is the shit of Egypt. In fact, I think Francesca Stavrokopoulou in her book God and Anatomy talks about these as shit gods. So I'm convinced that the actual correct translation of Gilulim is hockey gods. So I might replace that in my own translation as we continue here. Do not defile yourselves with the hockey gods of Egypt. I, the Eternal, am your God. But they defiled me and refused to listen to me. Not one of them cast away the detestable things they were drawn to, nor did they give up the hockey gods of Egypt. Then I resolved to pour out my fury upon them, to vent all my anger upon them there in the land of Egypt. But I acted for the sake of my name, that it might not be profaned in the sight of the nations among whom they were. For it was before their eyes, the nation's eyes here, it was before their eyes that I have made myself known to Israel, to bring them out of the land of Egypt. I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I led them into the wilderness. I gave them my laws and taught them my rules, by the pursuit of which humans shall live. Moreover, I gave them my Sabbaths, to serve as a sign between me and them, that they might know that it is I, God, who sanctify them. But the house of Israel rebelled against me in the wilderness. They did not follow my laws, and they rejected my rules, by the pursuit of which humans shall live. And they grossly desecrated my Sabbaths. Then I thought to pour out my fury upon them in the wilderness and to make an end of them. But I acted for the sake of my name, that it might not be profaned in the sight of the nations before whose eyes I had let them out. However, I swore to them in the wilderness that I would not bring them into the land flowing with milk and honey, the fairest of all lands that I had assigned. For they had rejected my rules, disobeyed my laws, and disobeyed my laws and desecrated my Sabbaths. Their hearts followed after their hockey gods. But I had pity on them and did not destroy them. I did not make an end of them in the wilderness. So I'm going to pause here. We're gonna continue with the video here in just a second, but I hope you can see what's happening in this text. Yahweh is retelling the story of the Exodus, and it's couched in a lot of this cultic language. The people who are enslaved in Egypt, he resolves to bring out, but they are obstinate. They are determined to go after the gods of Egypt, the hockey gods of Egypt, the shit of Egypt. And Yahweh is upset about this, but he can't kill them because he sees that the nations are going to notice this, and then they're going to hold him in contempt for this. So Yahweh feels an obligation to himself because he vowed to save these people. He's going to follow through with it. All right. So they end up in the wilderness, and again, Yahweh in the wilderness gives the people his statutes. He calls them my laws and my judgments, or my statutes and my rulings, I think this translation called them, by which they will find life. And still these people rejected those. So they're in the wilderness now, and they're just now getting the instructions from Yahweh, and this would be, the covenant code, I suppose, that they received at Mount Sinai. So they're receiving the laws and they reject them, and they continue after the hockey gods of Egypt. And at this point, Yahweh actually identifies them as their rules and their judgments that they're going after. Because of this, Yahweh, he wants to kill them. Once again, wants to destroy this people, but he can't, because he made a vow to rescue these people. And because the rest of the nations are watching, he can't destroy them. So he resolves to preserve their life, but he also says that this generation, these people, will not enter the land flowing with milk and honey that he promised to them. All right. We all up to speed on that? Does everyone understand that? Everyone sees what's going on? I hope so. And at this point, I'm going to continue with what the Christian Road Warrior says in his video about this passage. Mm-hmm. All right. You've got that? Have you kept that in mind? So, just going to pull the screen down here for a second. So the point here, as I mentioned, Yahweh has said that he won't destroy the people who have defiled his judgments and statutes and won't listen to him. He's not going to destroy them, but he's determined that they're not allowed to enter the land of promise. At this point, he identifies their behavior as their statutes and their rules, and he gives his statutes, my statutes and my rules, to their descendants, to their sons, their children, who are going into the land of promise. And his hope is now that this people is going to be able to follow and obey his rules and his statutes. So we're going to continue reading now up to verse 24. If I can pull it up. Thanks for bearing with me here, everyone. I hope everyone's having a good time. All right. Oh no, somebody said there was no. Oh shoot. Oh, I'm very sorry, guys, that you didn't see the Christian Road Warrior. I'm just seeing that now. Shoot. I think I must have not hit the right button. My summary was basically the same as what yeah. Thanks, Fish. I appreciate it. So my summary was pretty much on track with the message that the Christian Road Warrior wants to convey. He really wants to make a big deal, though, about the pronouns here, about noticing the difference between their statutes and judgments, that of the fathers, and my statutes and judgments, that of God, or that of Yahweh. So we're going to continue reading here in verse 18. Remember, Yahweh had pity on the people. He didn't destroy them, but they're not allowed to enter the land. In verse 18, he says, I warned their children in the wilderness. Do not follow the practices of your ancestors. Do not keep their ways, and do not defile yourselves with their hockey gods. I, the Eternal One, am your God. Follow my laws, and be careful to observe my rules, and hallow my Sabbaths, that they may be a sign between me and you, and that you may know that I, the Eternal One, am your God. But what happened? The children rebelled against me. They did not follow my laws, and they did not faithfully observe my rules, by the pursuit of which humans shall live. They profaned my Sabbaths. Then I resolved to pour out my fury on them, to vent all my anger upon them in the wilderness. But I held back my hand and acted for the sake of my name, that it might not be profaned in the sight of the nations before whose eyes I had led them out. However, I swore to them in the wilderness that I would scatter them among the nations and disperse them through the lands, because they did not obey my rules, but rejected my laws, profaned my Sabbaths, and looked with longing to the hockey gods of their ancestors. So I hope you see what's going on here. And you can see the repetition and the pattern of what's happening, right? Like it's the same thing happening to different generations of people. First, the people in the land of Egypt are going after the hockey gods, and Yahweh wants to destroy them, but resolves not to, because The nations are watching, and he vowed to rescue them. So he rescues them, brings them into the wilderness, gives them my laws and my statutes. God's giving them his law, the covenant code at Mount Sinai. What do? They reject it, and they continue after the hockey gods. Yahweh wants to destroy them, but he can't, because the nations are watching, and he vowed to rescue them. Instead, he says that as a punishment, they're not going to be allowed to enter the land of promise. He decides to focus his attention on their children who do enter the land of promise, and he reminds them, follow after my statutes and my laws. Don't follow after the statutes and the laws of your fathers, your ancestors. Don't go after the hockey gods like they did. Follow my statutes and my laws. And they still continue to reject him. It's the cycle. It keeps repeating over and over. So we're going to look now. I hope everyone's on track with what's happening. We're going to continue now with how the Christian road warrior handles verses 25 to 26. And this time, I promise that I will do it right. Okay. Everybody can see the video. Yes, I can see it on my screen here, so you should be able to see it. I will watch the chat closely to make sure that you can hear it. Please let me know if you can hear it. Just give me a thumbs up. All right.
Verse 25 now. Therefore,
you can hear it.
I was going to say, if it says therefore, why? What is it therefore? Because we're talking about what was said previously. Therefore, I also gave them up to statutes that were not good, and judgments by which they could not live. What are those? Going after what their fathers did, going after idols. Okay. And I pronounced them unclean, verse 26, because of their ritual gifts, in that they caused all their firstborn to pass through the fire. This is not him saying, I told you to do that, as we've seen before with the other verses. He's not saying, I told you to do that. He's talking about their rebellion all along the way to verse 26, their rebellion and following after their ancestors, that I might make them desolate and that they might know that I am the Lord. So when you read the full context of the passage, the verses that he quoted is not saying that God commanded them to do the sacrifice of the firstborn. No, that's not what happened. He's talking about how they went back to the idol worship and false worship of their forefathers. And the statutes that were not good were those, not the ones he gave. But if you only read those few verses that he puts out there in his so-called documentary and don't read the full context, you don't get that contrast that God puts up of what he told them to do, and the statutes and judgments that he gave them that were good for life, and the ones that they were following from their ancestors in idol worship that were not good for life. You don't see that contrast. And so you don't understand the context, and you get a false understanding from reading that verse out of context. Ezekiel 20:25 to 26 does not prove that Yahweh was giving Israel some sort of sacrifice your firstborn or your children. That's not what the text is saying in context. So it's a distortion of the passage. The firstborn that are passing through the fire, according to the passages we read earlier, that's not what God said. Didn't come into his heart. He did not order that. He hated that. So this is a distortion. This here from the myth vision is a distortion of the truth. So I just needed you to see that. I know that was a little tedious, but it's better to be tedious and get the text right in context than to do what these people do. Take the scripture out of context to make up any old thing they want to believe.
All right. I'm going to back this up here to the translation that he's using, because we need to more closely take a look at this. All right. Okay. Ezekiel 20, verse 25. So he's reading from the New King James Version, and this is what it says. Therefore, I gave them up to statutes that were not good, and judgments by which they could not live. And I pronounced them unclean because of their ritual gifts, in that they caused all their firstborn to pass through the fire, that I might make them desolate, and they might know that I am Yahweh, I am the Lord. I'm just going to get this back here to where I want it for the next segment. All right. Now, that sure sounds like he's got a point, doesn't it? If the text says that Yahweh gave them up to these statutes, then they wouldn't be his. If he made them if they rendered themselves unclean by offering their children as child sacrifices, then that would absolve Yahweh of culpability for this rule, for giving this instruction of child sacrifice. Is that really what's going on in this text? Well, fortunately, we can actually take a look at the text itself. And again, I'm gonna remind you, one of the reasons why I was prompted to do this stream tonight is because when Derek released this video, he got a ton of criticism for how badly he mistranslated this passage, and people kept coming back to specifically the way the New King James Version translates these two verses 25 and 26. Well, fortunately, we have here the Hebrew text in an interlinear with the English, and we're going to look closely at what the text actually says. Looking at the text on Sepharia here. All right. Now, for those of you who like to join us for our Hebrew reading streams, you will be happy that I'm going to get into some of the Hebrew here. I'm sorry. I'm sad that Josh and I missed our bi-weekly reading stream last week. So this is a bit of a bonus for you guys. Let's look at the text here, shall we? Starting in Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 25. What does this say? V'gam ani notati lachem chukim lo tovim umishpatim lo yichyu bahem. What does that say? So even I, here Yahweh uses the independent personal pronoun, which means he's setting special emphasis on the fact that he alone is providing this. So I alone gave to them chukim, or rules or statutes, that were not good. Umishpatim, rules or judgments by which they could not live. That's different than what appears in the New King James Version. And this shows me that the New King James Version on this particular passage is a bad translation. It's okay to say that, people. There are translations out there that aren't great. Some are a lot better than others. And the New King James Version on these particular passages is wrong. This is not Yahweh giving the people up to statutes. This is him giving to them statutes that were not good and judgments by which they could not live. It's absolutely crystal clear within the text what is going on here. I'm going to continue in verse 26. Va'atame otam b'mat notam b'ha avir kol peter rocham lema'an ashimem lema'an asher yedu asher ani Adonai. What does that say? And I defiled them by their gifts, by their passing over all of the first that opens the womb, their firstborn son. And this expression here, this ha'abir kol peter racham. This is a common expression that we see in several other places of the Hebrew Bible to describe a form of child sacrifice, specifically the sacrifice of the firstborn that is described in Exodus chapter 22. Here, Yahweh says he is the one who has defiled them by these gifts, which they are offering, which are part of the chukim and the mishpatim that he gave, which are not good. It's abundantly clear. When the New King James Version translates this part of the text, they say here, they say something like they defiled themselves, or I let them defile themselves, or something of that nature. But that's not what the text says. If you understand the language and you understand the syntax, you can see clearly the subject of the verb, the type of verb, whether it's active or passive or reflexive in the objects. And there's no doubt what's happening in this text. This is about Yahweh giving bad instructions and bad laws while the people have entered into the land. And remember, they've entered into the land and they've rejected his laws and instructions that he gave them in the wilderness. And as a result, he says, so they've rejected me. Instead, I'm going to give them bad laws by which they sacrifice their children. They're going to defile themselves. I'm going to make sure they defile themselves by offering to me their children in sacrifices because of these laws that I have given them. It's like heaping burning coals on the heads of these people who have already shown themselves to be totally unworthy in the sight of Yahweh. I hope that is entirely clear. How are we doing? Everyone's still doing good? Everyone's still with me? So I'm going to let's see here. Maybe I will. I'll take a look at a couple more. I have a couple more super chats here, so we'll cover those now. I've got some more to look at. He goes through a text in Micah chapter 6 that I'd like to cover and help correct here. I've noticed if Tomer is still awake and I see Simone is still up, but if you guys could let me know, did I get that right? I've got Hebrew speakers in the chat here of my stream. Please just give me a thumbs up. Let me know if I'm tracking. Let me know if I've got that right insofar as what the text says. Tomer says no. Wow. Oh dear, Tomer. What on earth did I get wrong? Uh-oh. I'm in trouble with Tomer. We'll have to talk about that. So, I'm sure he's getting after me. Yeah. So, Simone's getting after me for the pronunciation, but yes, it's ambiguous. Tomer says I made, Tomer says I made 2 errors. I'm sure I did. In terms of pronunciation, I don't think I made any errors in terms of the translation, though. Translation's solid. All right. So let's look at the super chats. Bear in mind, guys, I'm drinking my double IPA. This is Numbskull double IPA. I don't even know where this is from. I just picked this up from the liquor store today. Oh, Lighthouse Brewing Company is a family-owned and operated craft brewery, proudly brewing out of Victoria, BC since 1998. Very nice. Okay. Super chats. Okay. Thank you, Jesus Tales, for the $5 super chat. Where can I find a PDF of your unpublished research on Jeremiah's reception? throughout the ages. Ooh, well, I haven't released a PDF of my unpublished research. On well, I guess I gave it to some people on Discord, didn't I? So if you're part of the Milwaukee Atheist Discord, you can probably dig it up there, or if you ask someone over there, I'm sure they would be happy to help you find it. But thank you for your interest. I appreciate it. Mr. Brainig, thank you for the Australian $5 super chat. What is the attitude to slavery in the sectarian Qumran scrolls? Do they mention it? They do, in fact, mention it in a couple of places, and it's perfectly identical to the attitude towards the Qumran scrolls that appear throughout the Hebrew Bible texts. There's, I believe it's in the Damascus document. There's mention made of the handling of slaves as part of surrendered property to the community, or surrendered holdings to the community. I might get that wrong, but it's mentioned in a couple of places in the Damascus document in particular, and the attitude and the legislation there is exactly the same as what appears in the Hebrew Bible texts. But thank you very much for the super chat. I got a sticker from Michael Beverly, who is also my very first channel member. Thank you, Michael Beverly. I very much appreciate the support. And a $4.99 super chat from Tommy Thomas. If there was a question attached to that, then let me know. Otherwise, I appreciate it. I'm just gonna move on here. Oh, he sends another one. Tommy Thomas has sent another $4.99 super chat. Oh my God, what a compliment! I still think you look like Geddy Lee. Do you guys know who Geddy Lee is? Geddy Lee might be one of the greatest bass players of all time. And he was the lead singer for the Canadian super band, Rush. Thanks so much, Tommy Thomas. I really appreciate it. All right. Next, Jennifer Silves. Thank you so much for the $2 super chat. Is it fat and honey? I assume this is with reference to Exodus chapter 22, and I will have to look that up. Let me just see here when it says Exodus 22. Exodus 22:28. It just says you should not put off the this is again Jewish Publication Society. You should not put off skimming of the first yield of your vats. So this is the what does it say here? It's literally like the juices, your juices literally. So it has to do with I think it's like the wine press. I assume that's what you're getting at, Jennifer. But thank you so much for the super chat. A couple of people felt it necessary to and you got my attention. I appreciate that, and I'm so sorry that that you couldn't see the video. Oh dear, Lady Wasser, so happy you could make it. Thank you very much for the $4.99. Thank you for talking about my favorite topic. I'll watch it tonight. Have a great weekend. You too. I hope you have an excellent weekend. Your favorite topic. Wow. I feel like I'm spending a lot of time on this topic lately. And one of the reasons for that is because this is something that I'm spending some time, just the last couple of days, I've been working through a chapter about family and inheritance and social organization for my book that I'm writing on ancient Israelite religions, and it touches on a lot of these issues that deal with human sacrifice, and I have a whole section in a later chapter that will deal with human sacrifice as part of the sacrificial system in ancient Israel. Thanks so much for the super chat. I hope you have a great weekend. The Inquisitive Bible Reader for 500 things. Is that Yugoslavian? Or no, that's not Yugoslavian. Now I'm embarrassed. Is that yen? Maybe that's yen. I don't know what that is, but thank you very much for whatever that is. Can you tell us anything about Jeremiah and the lying pen of scribes? Oh, it's thank you, Inquisitive Bible Reader. It's Japanese yen. So I can't talk. I can't go into great depth about it here. I did a whole stream about this over on Captain Dabpool's channel about a month ago, where I talk at pretty considerable length about this, about what I think might be going on with this passage. So, the lying pen of scribes in Jeremiah chapter 8, verse 7 or verse 9? Let me look it up here. Jeremiah 8, verse 7. It's not there. Let me see. I'm just going to start reading out verse 4. Say to them, thus says Yahweh, when men fall, do they not get up again? If they turn aside, do they not turn back? Why is this people, Jerusalem, rebellious? With a persistent rebellion, they cling to deceit. They refuse to return. I have listened and heard. They do not speak honestly. No one regrets his wickedness and says, what have I done? They all persist in their wayward course like a steed dashing towards the fray. Even the stork in the sky knows her seasons, and the turtle dove, swift, and crane keep the time of their coming. But my people pay no heed to the law of Yahweh. How can you say we are wise and we possess the instruction or the Torah of Yahweh? Assuredly for naught has the pen labored, for naught the scribes. This is literally, surely the lying pen of scribes lies. So, it's a very interesting text. I think it has something. I think it has built within it a critique of scribal culture, as opposed to the delivery of the law orally at a very, very ancient period of time. I'd love to get into it further. I can't really right now, I'm afraid, though. But thanks so much, the Inquisitive Bible Reader, for the super chat. Land of milk and honey is fat and honey. Yes, that is correct. It is fat and honey. You're right, Jennifer Silvas. I'm sorry that cost you an extra $2. I feel bad. Oh, look who's in the house, guys. Thank you, Satan, for the $10 super chat. Always enjoy Dr. Kip dispensing knowledge. What's the abbreviation on that IPA? I'm enjoying a nice Turley Zin at 14.5%. Can you see that? No, it's blurry. I turned off my autofocus, unfortunately. It says 9.1. So I'm going to finish it, if that's all right with everyone. And at this point, I hope I have shown sufficiently what's going on in Ezekiel 20, verses 25 to 26, and why the charge that Derek is not reading these texts in context is totally fallacious. This is not a context issue. This is a syntax issue. The syntax of the passage is crystal clear about what Yahweh is doing. The complaint about the broader context, to my eye, is a red herring. Wow, it's 7 o'clock already. I noticed. I'm gonna listen, guys. If you're interested in sticking around, I'm going to continue. But I do notice that Apologia has started streaming on. Oh, you know what I can do? I can do this. Hold on. Let's do this, guys. You can watch us both. There we go. Give the people what they want. But by all means, if you need to run and go over and watch Paul and Dave, that's where I'm heading when I'm done here, by the way. So I totally get it. But just so you don't miss anything, we'll keep it on in the background for you. All right. Now I'm going to continue with the Christian Road Warriors presentation about child sacrifice. So he looks at one more text here, which is he does something with Ezekiel 16, which I'm going to skip that, but then he does one more thing here with let me get the timestamp right, 9:50. No, 10:26. Okay. So he looks at this last text in Micah chapter 6, which provides a pretty clear description of the sacrificial system as it functioned at we assume in the 8th century when Micah was writing. Okay, so I am going to pull this up. Can everyone see it? If you can see it, you should be able to hear it. So please, someone in the chat, give me a thumbs up. Let me know if you can hear it when I start playing the video.
Israel asks what it must do to get Yahweh to act on its behalf.
With what should I approach Yahweh and bow to the exalted God? Will I approach him with burnt offerings, with one-year-old calves? Will Yahweh be pleased with thousands of rams or with tens of thousands of rivers of oil? Will I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my belly, for the sin of myself?
We have here an escalating list of increasingly precious gifts that the supplicant can offer Yahweh, beginning with the sacrifice of calves and ending with the ultimate offering, the sacrifice of one's firstborn child. Now, some scholars argue that the passage is satirical hyperbole, and that the final offer of one's firstborn should not be taken literally. However,
yep, actually, it kind of makes sense, and I'll show you. I'll explain why later on. But let's hear the foolishness.
Stavrakopoulos argues that these verses are
best understood as a series of legitimate and increasingly valuable offerings, which are ultimately fruitless for the present purpose of the poet, that is, in seeking to atone for sin.
It's important to note that Yahweh rejects all the sacrifices equally at the end of the oracle: the animal sacrifices, the oil, and the firstborn. We know without question that other biblical laws demanded offerings of animals and oil, and there is nothing in Micah 6 that distinguishes them from the firstborn sacrifice.
Let's take a look at the text. And this one is, again, a stupid argument. I mean, this is beyond stupid. I mean, I remember, what was that comic they used to say? I think it was Marsha Warfield. She used to say something like to the effect, that's a special kind of stupid. And this,
remember, guys, it's beyond stupid.
This is a special kind of stupid here. Seriously. And you know, trying to dress it up with so-called scholars doesn't make the stupid any less stupid. Okay. Actually, it makes it worse, because you got these quote unquote scholars being stupid. And I think it's time for this guy to get better scholars, or at least to be more honest and forthright with what he's doing. Let's look. We're going to look at the Hebrew and the English. First, we're going to look at both. Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams? This is probably the author Micah speaking. 10,000 rivers of oil. Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? Now, clearly in English, this is what? a question. These are questions. These are not statements of fact. These are not, oh, I want to do this because Yahweh told me to. Come on. No, these are questions. And in the Hebrew, you just hover over that, you should see the information here. It's a particle interrogative verb in the call imperfect, third person masculine singular. Okay. But the key phrase is particle interrogative. That's just a fancy way of saying we're talking about the Hebrew text being in the form of a question, which is obvious because, well, the English is translated that way. So my question is, why are you taking a question and somehow making it some kind of statement of fact, as if Micah is saying that these are legitimate things that I can do, so let me offer them? He's asking a question. By way of example, if I ask the question, did you see the guy at the mall shoot up the mall and kill many people? I'm asking a question. I'm not stating that that's actually what happened. I'm asking someone, did you see that? Now, me asking that doesn't prove that it's something that's a statement of fact, or that I actually saw that, or did something that you could see. Did you see this happen? It's a question. And for some crazy reason, this scholar and the author of the video is trying to, or this so-called documentary is trying to argue that this is a statement of fact. Learn the difference between an interrogative and a statement of fact. You can't make this stuff up. I mean,
What are you talking about, man?
really? Yeah, that's a good point there. Yeah, it's obviously rhetorical, and the Hebrew text is in the interrogative, so it's not a statement of fact. It's just, God, dude.
All right.
I'm going to show you what God thinks of sacrifice of children. Me asking that doesn't prove.
I'm just pulling the text back up here, because it's important to go through it, and maybe I'm too lazy to bring it up myself. So his point here is, because this is framed as a question, which is something that Derek clearly preserved in the translation that he selected for this specific passage. So he certainly understands that this is a question, and he talks about what's happening within the text and why we understand the force of the questions being asked. The Christian road warrior here wants us to believe that because these are questions, and he says that this might be satirical, and it makes good sense to him that it's satirical. But the point he's making is, because this is in the form of the interrogative, it's indicated with there's a certain particle that appears in ancient Hebrew to indicate questions, and this passage has the interrogative particle to show that these are a series of questions that are being asked. So Christian Road Warrior's point is that because these are questions, we can't take this seriously as something that God wants. Well, the only thing I can think of is that the Christian Road Warrior does not understand how rhetoric works. He does not understand the purpose and the force and the function of a rhetorical question, because that's what these are. The prophet Micah, or whoever wrote this particular text, is forming his oracle in a series of questions to provide them rhetorical force in anticipation of what the right answer is. Let's just look briefly at the passage here. I assume this is probably also the New King James Version. The translation of this passage looks generally okay to me at a glance. But let's take a look at what it says here, shall we? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, 10,000 rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? So the writer here has started. Sorry, I probably should have backed it up a little farther here to let's look at so yeah, I can't really see the Hebrew, the text there. So he started off by asking, what does Yahweh want from me? And then he responds, he frames the question in a series of different ways in what follows, but with every one of these elements that he mentions, there is an increase in value. I'm actually just pulling it up on my computer here to read it for you. Here's what the text says, starting in verse 6 of Micah chapter 6. I'm reading again from the Jewish Publication Society. This is the 1985 version. With what shall I approach Yahweh? Do homage to God on high. Shall I approach him with burnt offerings? With calves a year old? Would Yahweh be pleased with thousands of rams, with myriads of streams of oil, literally 10,000s of rivers of oil? It's a hell of a lot of oil, guys. Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for my sin? So he makes a point in his response to this that when he asks if there's like a mass shooting at the mall, and he asks the question, did you see the mass shooting at the mall? He's not endorsing the activity of the shooter as a good thing. I think that's I don't know anything about philosophy, so someone can correct me, but I think that's what you would call like a non sequitur. It's completely it's a completely irrelevant analogy, or at least the way that he's presented this analogy is irrelevant to what's happening within the text. A better analogy in that situation is if there's a mass shooting at the mall and everybody knows about it, and I ask someone, did you see that there was a mass shooting at the mall? I'm not asking because I want to know the yes or no answer. My question is with the force that surely you, just like everybody else, can see exactly what's going on here. Did you see the shooting at the mall? Because of course you did, like everybody else. That's the proper way to analogize this. That's what's going on in the passage. And that's what Derek's getting at in his original video, which I encourage everybody to watch. The link is in the description. So the point of the passage here is that there is an increasing value to the elements of sacrifice that are mentioned by this author. First, it's with burnt offerings. Then a year-old calf. Then thousands of rams. Then 10,000s of rivers of oil. And finally, my own firstborn son, the fruit of my own body for my sins. The point here is that these are all things that the writer, that his audience understands to be efficacious within the existing sacrificial system of the people of Israel. That's the point. And that's why scholars will look at a passage like this and say, this sure seems to imply that child sacrifice, that human sacrifice was a thing that occurred in ancient Israel. Is that clear? I hope that's clear to everyone. And I don't really need to get into the translation of this, but here's the thing that bugs me. It bugs me when guys who don't know what they're doing, because this is what happened. Christian Road Warrior looked at this and he did not understand the purpose and the point of the passage. He doesn't understand how the rhetorical question works. And because of that, he misunderstands the passage entirely. And then by focusing, by needling in on this little point about the fact that it's a question, he wants to shut down this idea of the possibility of human sacrifice in ancient Israel. And in the process, misses the point of what the prophet is trying to convey. What does Micah go on to say here? He has told you, human being, what is good and what Yahweh requires of you, only to do justice and to love goodness and to walk modestly with your God. Then will your name achieve wisdom. So the prophet is not saying that all of these sacrifices are not good. That's not what he's saying. And importantly, it's all the sacrifices. It's not just the human sacrifice of the firstborn at the end. Notice, it's the burnt offering, it's the offering of the yearling, it's the offering of the 1,000 rams, it's the offering of the 10,000 rivers of oil, and it's the offering of the firstborn. You have to take them all together because that's what the prophet is doing. And then the prophet doesn't say these things are all bad. That's not what he's saying. What he's saying is these aren't enough. Or he's saying these don't work as well as you think they do. What Yahweh really wants, what God really wants is this. He wants justice, he wants goodness, and he wants modesty. That's how you achieve wisdom. And that message only makes sense if you understand that Micah's audience is expecting the answer to all of these questions to be yes. That's how this works. All right. That's it for the video. There's still 136 of you watching, which is great. Thanks so much, guys, for hanging out with me on a Friday night. Yes, sir, Mr. Inquisitive Bible Reader. I am in pastor mode. I used to preach. I used to preach a lot. And sometimes you can't grow out of it. I don't know. So, Zaza. Zaza says don't go. I went, I won't go yet. I still have some super chats to answer. And if you guys have questions, feel free to throw them out there. I will try and track those as best as I can. Today, I have a donaire waiting for me in the kitchen for dinner. My wife, I mentioned this already, right? My wife is not home. She went camping. We bought some new tires for the Honda Pilot this last week, and she ordered them and sent me to go get them installed. And they are the biggest tires that you can put on my 2010 Honda Pilot. The installer at the tire place told me, he says you can't get anything bigger on this car. So she took the Honda with her brand new tires and went camping in the woods with her friends for the weekend. So I'm actually going to head out tomorrow and bring her some breakfast. But I had already had this set up. I had some other things that I was doing today. So I am stuck here home alone on a Friday night, on Good Friday night with you good people. So here we are. Is that an ad? I think that's an ad, guys. I better skip that ad. Oh, sorry. There we go. All right. So anyways, she's gone for the night. And I was walking the dogs this afternoon, and I decided that with her gone for the night, I would prefer not to make dinner. So I stopped at my favorite donair shop. And I was originally just going to buy one donair for dinner. But when I was in the shop, I was like, it's almost lunchtime. So maybe I'll buy like a donair for lunch. And then I might as well just buy a donair for dinner too. So I have a donair, a beef donair from Tulip Donair, waiting for me in the kitchen. But that's okay. I'll hang out with you guys for a while yet. And I've still got some super chats here that I can look at. If you have any other questions, feel free to throw those out there. I will try to get to those. The Free Thinker, Tyler. Good to see you, Tyler. I'm happy that that you're here. What are your thoughts? And thanks for the $10, buddy. What are your thoughts on Curid and his? God damn it, Tyler! I don't know who this is. I'm a biblical scholar. I don't know anything about theology. I don't know anything about theology, but I will read your question. What are your thoughts on Curid and his polemical theology? And about Pharaoh's heart being heavy for Egyptian afterlife myth versus hardening in terms of setting the will. I think I know what you're getting at, so I'm going to attempt to answer your super chat, but I'm probably going to get this totally wrong. And before I do, I'm going to take a drink. So I think what Tyler's getting at is this idea that within Egyptian religious practice and ideology, the heart of the pharaoh was weighed on a scale after his death before he could enter into the afterlife as a means of determining his value. I suspect that's what you're getting at is this idea being heavy in the Egyptian afterlife myth versus hardening in terms of setting the will. I have to go back and look at the text itself in the Hebrew Bible to see exactly what the language looks like. But importantly, this is a pretty strong Deuteronomistic. Excuse me. This is a pretty strong Deuteronomistic point that gets made quite a bit throughout a number of the texts that are clearly Deuteronomistic, or at least sympathetic to Deuteronomistic theology and thinking, where the heart is the center of your moral self, I suppose. And I suspect that is a better way through which to read the Exodus story about Pharaoh and the hardening of his heart. But honestly, Tyler, I mean, why are you asking me a theology question, right? You should know better. But thanks anyways. I appreciate it. Good to see you here, buddy. Charles Ellis, thank you for the $2 super chat. His number is 3140 about human sacrifice. I don't know it offhand, so I'm going to need to look it up here. I feel like what is this 3140? I feel like my friend Dan McClellan here answering your questions while I'm looking up texts. 31. Going to start in verse 36. Thus, the half share of those who have gauged in the campaign. The number of the sheep was 330. Oh, I know this passage. Let me look at this again. 3140. So this is after the raid on the the Amalekites, I think, in Numbers 31. I have to go all the way up to the top of the chapter, I think. Oh, it's the Midianites. That's right. Okay. So Israel has raided the Midianites, and they've taken a whole bunch of plunder. And here's what it said. In verse 31, it says, Moses and Eleazar the priest did as the Lord commanded Moses. The amount of the booty, or the plunder, other than the spoil that the troops had plundered, came to 675,000 sheep, 72,000 head of cattle, 61,000 asses, donkeys, and a total of 32,000 human beings, namely the women who had not had carnal relations. Thus, the half share of those who had engaged in the campaign was this. The number of sheep was 337,500, and Yahweh's levy from the sheep was 675. The cattle came to 36,000, from which Yahweh's levy was 72. The donkeys came to 30,500, from which Yahweh's levy was 61. And the number of human beings was 16,000, from which Yahweh's levy was 32. And here's the verse 41. Moses gave the contributions levied for Yahweh to Eleazar the priest, as Yahweh had commanded. And that's it. Yes, you are on point here. This is a description of a form of human sacrifice. One of the things that I point out in my course that I'm getting into in my book, and you can see this in any number of discussions about the topic, is that sacrifices within ancient Israel, within the system, took various forms. There were different types of sacrifices. I like to make distinctions in the I just saw something. Simone, please remind me again what your question was. I will try and flag it. Okay, so I like to distinguish between elements and type in terms of sacrifice. So you can have elements are the things that you sacrifice, right? And I suspect that most sacrifices that were made were probably like grains or libations, so liquids like fat and wine and those sorts of things, juice from fruit. That's probably what most of the elements were. But then also clean animals, so certain birds, certain types of tetrapods, livestock. I make the point in my course that any kind of sacrifice, in order for a sacrifice to be valid, it has to have an active role in the economy. So it's got to be like a domesticated animal, like a sheep or a donkey or a cow. It can't be like a snake or a lizard or an insect, because these don't play a role in the economy. They're not useful, right? It's got to be useful in order for it to count. So these are the elements, but then there's different types of sacrifices. There's like the olot, the olah, which is the whole burnt offering, which is the most important, the most valuable of offerings, of sacrifices to Yahweh, is the one where the element, and it's usually an animal in this case, is completely immolated. It is devoted entirely to Yahweh, right? So the whole thing goes up in smoke. But there are other types of sacrifices from which only parts of them are burned in fire and offered up to Yahweh, and then the priest can actually take certain parts of the meat or the whatever else back for himself, right? So there are different types of sacrifices, and these different types of sacrifices will incorporate various elements. So this is what we have happening here. This is a type of sacrifice. These are levies that have been this is part of the devoted thing. It's not a cherem or the ban in toto, because in a situation where Yahweh has issued a cherem or a ban, the entire thing is wiped out and offered to Yahweh. So in this particular passage, Yahweh has stipulated at the outset that his portion, because part of the whole passage is that the plunder is divided up between all the people of the land, not just the people who fought. They get more, but the people of the land also enjoy the plunder, part of the plunder, not as much, but they also get part of it. And of course, who gets the most of it? Yahweh. Now, what does that mean for Yahweh to get his share of the plunder? The only sensible response to that question is through the form of destruction or sacrifice. That is how elements from the natural human world are passed on to the realm of the gods, is through their destruction. It's a great question. I appreciate you asking it, Charles. Thanks again for the $2 super chat. All right, what's next? Searching Deeper. Thank you for 35 things. Whatever those are, I really appreciate it. I think it is just an archaic way of stating Thessalonians 2:11-12. God gave them over to powerful delusions because they rejected the truth. So this is with regards to what's happening in Ezekiel chapter 20, verses 25. And I understand why you want the text to say that. But the fact of the matter is that when you look at the text as it's written in Hebrew, it does not say that. It doesn't. The text says, I gave to them laws and judgments which were not good, by which I made them defiled by their passing over the fire of the first issue of their womb by their gifts. That's what the text says. And it's hard to get around that without doing damage to what's there in the actual text. I really appreciate the money, the super chat, but I'm sorry, I just can't agree that this is the same thing as what's happening in the Thessalonians passage, and because the language indicates this is clearly not what's going on. All right, what's next? Dark Circle 22, thank you for the $10 super chat. Sitting here, shuffling my tarot. The artwork is pretty, and shuffling is calming. Don't judge me. I won't. I promise. While watching an apologist, be gently corrected because it helps the religious trauma. Thanks. How nice of you to say that I'm gentle. You know, I think you're saying that I'm gentle. That's super nice of you, because you know, I often am told that I'm not very gentle. I don't know if you guys knew that, but I have like I have a reputation apparently. I watched a response video that Michael Jones did a couple weeks ago, and he said that the Twitter kip is different from the YouTube kip, and he likes the YouTube kip better than the Twitter kip, but I don't know. I mean, you can only do so much with 280 characters, right? At least that's my excuse on Twitter. But I really, really appreciate the support. Thanks so much, Dark Circles 22, and cheers to your tarot shuffling. All right. What is next? Oh, Searching Deeper is back. Micah 6:8 is the answer. No. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. Yes. So you're right that the answer is no, but this only works if everyone thinks the answer is yes. Do you understand the difference? For the prophet's rhetorical point to be made, for it to have any value at all, the answer has to be yes. Like I should say the expected answer has to be yes. And I would say, importantly, while I agree with you that what Yahweh requires is for you to act justice and to love mercy and to walk in humility with your God, that's the correct answer. Importantly, he's not invalidating these other things, right? He's not saying these things are bad. He's not saying stop sacrificing. Okay? What the prophet is saying is that this is what's really important. And whether you keep sacrificing or not, he doesn't really leave that. He doesn't answer that question. But again, I appreciate the support. And I've got another one here from Searching Deeper. Thank you very much. Claude Al. Is that Claude L or Claude AI? But Micah 6:8 provides the resounding answer. The verse emphatically declares that child sacrifice is not what God requires. Yes, but again, he's saying that all of these things, every sacrifice is not what he requires to be wise. I'm going to look at this again because I think there might be a couple of different things going on here as well. Earlier in the passage, I'm going to start at verse 1 of chapter 6. Hear what Yahweh is saying. Come present my case before the mountains and let the hills hear you pleading. Hear, you mountains, the case for Yahweh, you firm foundations of the earth. For Yahweh has a case against his people. He has suit against Israel. My people, what wrong have I done to you? What wrong have I done you? What hardship have I caused you? Testify against me. In fact, I brought you up from the land of Egypt. I redeemed you from the house of bondage. And I sent before you Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. My people, remember what Balak, king of Moab, plotted against you. How Balaam, son of Beor, responded to him from Shittim to Galal. And you will recognize the gracious acts of Yahweh. With what shall I approach? So this is now not Yahweh speaking. There's a change in speaker here. With what shall I approach Yahweh? Do homage to God on high. Is that Elion? Sorry, I got distracted. Oh no, it's Elohim. Okay. To God on high. Shall I approach him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Would Yahweh be pleased with thousands of rams, with myriads of streams of oil? Shall I give the firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of body for my sin? He has told you, O man, what is good and what Yahweh requires of you. Only this: do justice, love goodness, walk modestly with your God. Then will your name achieve wisdom. I'm going to continue on here. Hark, Yahweh summons the city. Hear, O scepter, for who can direct her but you? Will I overlook the wicked man's house, the granaries of wickedness, and the accursed short ephah? Shall he be acquitted despite wicked balances and a bag of fraudulent weights, whose rich men are full of lawlessness and whose inhabitants speak treachery, with tongues of deceit in their mouth? I in turn have beaten you sore, have stunned you for your sins. It goes on like this, but I think the point of the passage here is that this is a charge being laid against the people by Yahweh, that they have been derelict in their duty, the things that Yahweh really wants, which is justice and kindness and long suffering, right? It's not a condemnation of sacrifice. What he's saying is you've been offering all these sacrifices, all these very expensive, valuable sacrifices, and they're not enough. That's not going to cut it. These are the things that I require. It's not that, as I read the text, it's not that this replaces all the sacrifices. It's that without them, your sacrifices are meaningless. But again, I very much appreciate the support. Ronan of Stag for 5 Canadian dollars. Cheers, my Canadian friend. Thank you for hanging out, Dr. Kip. What are your thoughts on James Cork Webster's Oxford article on Christian persecution, please? God damn it. Ronan of Stag. I have not read James Cork Webster's Oxford article on Christian persecution. I'm sorry. I have no thoughts, and I feel sad that you wasted your money because I don't know what he says in his article on Christian persecution. So I can maybe give you some of my thoughts on Christian persecution, which are probably totally irrelevant and, strongly fueled by my double IPA. But I think while there are clearly periods in the first 200 or 300 years of church history when they endured institutionalized persecution, so state mandated persecution. But even beyond that, I suspect they also just endured poor treatment within their communities. This is something that we see come forward in, I believe it's Pliny, when Pliny is sent by the emperor to go deal with the Christians specifically because of this issue, because they have become a bit of a social interruption. So I expect this is the case. This is late first, early second century at this point, but I expect this is the case throughout the empire, right? Like they're probably not having a good time of it everywhere, and as a result are enduring social marginalization, and in certain periods of church history, imperial dedicated persecution. So what I think happens though is that the church, Christian theology, kind of leans into this idea of persecution as an ideal of faith. The word in Greek for testify is martyr. Martyr. It's the word from which we get the English word martyr. And that's church coinage right there, right? It became so important, this ideal of suffering for the sake of the cross became so deeply ingrained in Christian theology that it actually entered the vernacular. For like literally 2 millennia of church history, we understand martyrs to be something other than what the Greek word originally meant. But that's all the thoughts that I have. I'm sorry I haven't read the article. If I find some time, maybe I will. I've got one more here. If you guys have any more questions, time is it? It's almost 8. I've almost been going for 3 hours, which is the longest. Listen, I will go as long as I have beer. So if you want to keep it out and watch me drink, you're more than welcome to. Simone, yes. Okay. So this is the question I found. I think this is the one that you were asking about. If the Deuteronomic cherem could accurately be described as human sacrifice as per that terrible Twitter thread, is that the right one, Simone? Yeah, there we go. She says I got the right one. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, so when I teach my course, which is available through MVP Courses, everyone, this is an important point. And I actually did something else that you guys might want to check out is a stream that I did a few months back on Tyler Vela's channel. That's the Freed Thinker podcast, where I talked about Old Testament atrocities. And as I understand it, there is just to give a little bit of background and to illustrate exactly what I'm talking about here. So it occurs first in Deuteronomy chapter 7. It's mentioned, I think, a couple of more places in Deuteronomy, but then frequently in the conquest narratives in the book of Joshua, there is the recurrence of this noun, cherem, which we translate as the ban or devoted thing, and which indicates the total destruction of people and life in a town or a city. So this is the best example of this is what happens at the city of Jericho. I think this is Joshua chapter 6. So the city of Jericho is subjected specifically to a cherem. Yahweh says, they shall be a cherem for me. Like it's the ban. This is the purpose of their destruction. And he specifies that you are to slaughter every living thing and then burn the entire city and everything still in it in satisfaction of this devotion or this ban. So the word cherem, and I think the translation of this as a devoted thing is significant. It's cultic. So this suggests that this is a cultic thing, right? There is religious significance to the total destruction of these people in Jericho, and this is what happens, right? The walls of the city fall, the people go in, and they kill everyone, and they burn everything except for Yahweh saved Rachav and her family because she showed kindness to the spies. But then he said, destroy everything else. And the whole point of this story is to illustrate the seriousness of this, right? Achan holds back a couple of items for himself. So he holds back a nice tunic and some silver. He buries them in the ground. And the whole point of the story after that, they go to Ai, and they suffer a defeat. And Yahweh says, the reason you were defeated is because you didn't give me everything that was my due. You didn't satisfy the cherem in totality like I said you should. Somebody held something back, which was Achan. And as a result, they lost to Ai. And as punishment, Achan and his entire family are stoned, and then I also believe they are burned. So, but there's a couple of important things to note here. First and foremost, I often couch this in sacrificial language as as if this is a type of sacrifice. The cherem is an offering to Yahweh. It's his plunder, basically, right? And within an ancient Near Eastern, what I called it, within an ancient Near Eastern economy of sacrifice, with the way this works, in the very oldest text that we have, there is this sense that you can only get things from the natural world into the divine realm through their destruction. Scholars will talk about this as transference. Transference occurs through destruction or death. So, objects are smashed. Animals and humans are killed and burned. Liquids are poured out on the ground or on the altar. These are all forms of destruction or turning something that's useful into something that's useless for us. This is how you get it to the divine realm, to the God. So that's what's happening in these instructions for total cherem, for total ban. I think I don't necessarily know if the Israelites understood that they're transferring these things to Yahweh's presence by way of their destruction, but that's the underlying point, right? That's where this comes from, is this idea that the way you get what the gods want to them is to destroy them completely. So when Yahweh is talking about the total destruction of a people, like he specifies in Deuteronomy and Joshua, it's a type of offering. It's a devotion. It's a separation of what belongs to Yahweh, and the way to get it to him is to destroy it. Simone's got something else here. Whoops. Things are happening too fast. The word is also used in Leviticus, which points towards a kind of cultic understanding, I think. I totally agree. And I haven't looked closely enough at those Leviticus passages, but I'm super intrigued now. Thanks for your question. It was a great one. I've got a couple more super chats here, I think. Searching Deeper is back. Micah 6:7 uses hyperbole. The reader knows these are not real options. Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000 rivers of oil? You're right. But also, that's not the only thing that's being offered. It says at the beginning of that passage, it starts with, will he be pleased with a burnt offering? Right? So if you're going to suggest that the point is Yahweh doesn't want these things, like it's hyperbole, there's no possible way anybody could offer this, you still have to contend with that first question where it says, does he want a burnt offering? Or does he want a new calf? It's hard to get around that to suggest that this is hyperbole. But thank you for your question and for your support. Coffee Breath, good to see you. I may have missed it, but what do you think about Molech being a kind of sacrifice, not a god? It's the Mulk, or chief ultimate sacrifice. There was never a god named Molech. Yeah, you did miss it, buddy. I talked about this a little bit earlier in the stream when we were talking about the passages in Leviticus and Deuteronomy and Jeremiah specifically, but this is a critical point for sure. And we know this on the basis of the evidence that comes from around the ancient Near East, in particular, the evidence from Punic cultic sites. So the point here is that, and I want to pull something out here that I didn't mention. So you mentioned that it's the mulk, or the chief, or the ultimate sacrifice. So the word there, Molech or Moch, is formed out of these three letters, Mem, Lamed, Kaf. And these are, sorry, I'm trying to do a couple things at once here. I will pull that up in a minute. I didn't mean to do it just yet. Where's Coffee Breast question? Let's bring that back. So this is the same verb. The three letters form the same verb that we translate as to be king. The noun king is melech, which is formed out of the same verb. I know that Stavrokopoulou, Francesca Stavrokopoulou, in her excellent work on this that she started through her dissertation, has, I believe it's her, that she has speculated that this is a type of ritual or sacrifice, at least within Israel, that was adopted by the royal family, by the kings in Jerusalem, and you see this happening in like the last 100 years before Josiah's reforms. Manasseh offers his firstborn son as a moch sacrifice. Achaz, the father of Josiah, offers his firstborn son as a moch sacrifice. So it looks like, sorry, I got a cough. Excuse me. So it looks like Stavrokopoulou suggests that this is a ritual that has been adopted relatively recently by the Judean royal house, by the Jerusalem aristocracy, and it's part of Josiah's reforms, and one of the reasons why he's so motivated and determined to go through this religious revolution is because of the brutality of these rituals that have been adopted by the kings of Jerusalem. It's a great question. Thank you very much. You're absolutely correct. As far as we can tell, there was never a god named Molech, which is why more and more scholars are moving towards this idea that this is a type of a ritual and not a specific sacrifice to a I pulled up a couple of others here. I'm going to have to get going pretty quick. I'm not even finished my beer. But it's coming. All right. Inquisitive Bible reader. Thanks for being here, by the way, Paul. I really appreciate you hanging around with me, hanging out with me tonight. And the next time I get a chance to talk to you, I will say this to you in person. But I think you and Derek did an excellent job in that video that you made about this terrible topic of child sacrifice. And I encourage everyone, the link is in the video description. If you have not yet seen this video, and you need to go check it out. So yes, Inquisitive Bible Reader says thousands of rams or liters of oil is not hyperbole if they are the collective sacrifices of Israel. And that's true. One of the things that we know of the system, we're told in I believe it's 1 Kings chapter 1. We are told by the Deuteronomist that sorry, I'm just my fingers are. We're told by the Deuteronomist that at the dedicatory ceremony of the first temple, the temple that Solomon built, he this is literally what he offered, right? Thousands of animals. there are huge numbers of animals. I don't know it off the top of my head. I would have to go back and look. But there are huge numbers of animals that are sacrificed on the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, in the Jerusalem temple, as mandated by the Book of Deuteronomy. So, these are not necessarily individual sacrifices. Like the sacrifices on the Day of Atonement, and maybe I will just point this out as well. The Day of Atonement is specifically, so this is like the catch-all day. Sacrifice and atonement is not about correcting your bad behavior. Okay, I mean, this kind of gets tied into it, but this is about removing impurity. Yahweh, in order for him to remain in his tabernacle or his temple, in order for his presence to remain in Jerusalem, the area needs to be purified. And that happens through sacrifice. Specifically, we are told in the book of Leviticus that purification occurs through blood, the blood of animals, the blood of humans. So blood is required in order to cleanse the space to make it suitable for Yahweh. And that's what this is about. Where you see that word in the Hebrew Bible, sin, we have this tendency to think of poor or bad behavior. But really, this has a lot more to do with things that make us impure. Yes, bad behavior can be involved in that, but there's way more to it. And the primary concern is not ensuring that we're good people on our best behavior, so much as it's ensuring that we're clean, ritually pure. So the Day of Atonement is like the catch-all once a year to ensure that anything, it's specifically for the removal of inadvertent sin. So anything that has occurred without your knowing, impurity that you have picked up without knowing it. The Day of Atonement is designed specifically to solve that problem, to ensure Yahweh's continued presence. It happened once a year, and it was, to cover the sins or the ritual impurity of the whole nation, like all the sons of Israel. These rituals were required, and there was an enormous amount of sacrifices to go with it. So I don't remember now who posed the question, but I appreciate it. Thank you. All right, what's next? Zaza says, I disagree with seeking what it's seeking deeper. I disagree with seeking deeper's conclusion, but I can see the argument. The verse starts with realistic offerings and subsequently lists increasingly hyperbolic offerings. I totally think that the implication is there. And this is part of where I tend to think that human sacrifice in ancient Israel was incredibly rare. It didn't happen very often. People, and it was a point that I make in my course is that it's a last resort for a lot of people. And this it's complicated too, because there's various things that happen at various points in time. Like I think the Bechor, the firstborn sacrifice, is probably the earliest form of human sacrifice, but there's different types of sacrifices. Like the sacrifice that Jephthah made was in fulfillment of a vow in Judges chapter 11. The sacrifice that Misha made to Chemosh in 2 Kings chapter 3 is, out of desperation to curry the favor of his God. And it works, right? The Molech sacrifice is something that seems to have been performed by kings in Jerusalem. So yeah, it's there. I think the point. There's a couple points to make here. Yes, I would agree that, and the point of the passage in Micah 6 is that a human sacrifice is the ultimate sacrifice. It is deemed of higher value than all of these things, right? And that's how this passage works. But on that note, I think the point is also that it's a sacrifice that almost never, like few people actually went through with it because of the cost, right? I don't think these were especially common. All right. Searching deeper is back with logically. With hyperbole, you start with little and go to the biggest, most exaggerated. This is clear. In this case, that is why child sacrifice is last. Yes, but I'll just repeat that again. This only works if the prophet is insisting that all the sacrifices, even the exaggerated ones, are futile. The point, I'll just repeat it. The point is more about the perceived efficacy of these things. The expected answer to all these questions is yes. And the kicker at the end is that, it's actually no. Right? So the point may also be that these are not, I think you could make, so let's say this, searching deeper, I think you could make the point that these aren't what Yahweh actually wants, but these are certainly things that people thought Yahweh wanted. And at that point, I suspect we're splitting hairs. I'm going to move on here. And I'm going to get out of here in a few minutes, guys. So maybe I will just go. I've got a couple more, and then maybe I'll shut this down. It's already 8 o'clock here on the West Coast. I can't imagine what time it is anywhere else in the world because I'm drinking too much beer. And there's another commercial. So, oh, look, that was fast. Okay. Coffee Breath is back. Thank you for the $4.99 super chat. Are you familiar with Milgram's theory that blood was detergic? Only blood could cleanse sin from the Holy Temple. Chipping in some cash for. Oh yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it. It was an expense. Look, this was a $10 IPA. This was super expensive, guys. I do not ordinarily spend that much on beer. 4 p.m. here. Sorry, Simone says it's 4 in the afternoon over there. Lucky you. All right. So yeah, absolutely. Milgram has written in my opinion the best commentary on Leviticus. I haven't read the whole thing. I've gone through bits of it. I expect to spend a lot more time in Leviticus. I'm working through chapter 9 right now in my book, which is about marriage and family and covenant and circumcision and genealogies. And then chapter 10 is going to be about national identity and how do I put it? I guess national myths about forging identity. Chapter 11 is about the textual representation of religious practice in the Hebrew Bible. Chapter 12 is about the archaeological record of religious practice in Iron Age Israel. Chapter 12 is about the institutions of the state institutions of kings and prophets. I'm quite excited about doing that one because I'm going to rework a whole bunch of stuff with regards to the succession narratives in the end of 2 Samuel and the beginning of 1 Kings. And then after that is I got a whole chapter dedicated to the temple And then after that, I got a whole chapter dedicated to sacrifices. So I am eventually going to get into Milgram with some higher attention. But this particular idea that blood was a detergent is something that I am totally convinced by. That is that blood makes clean or pure. Blood purifies. Thanks again, Coffee Breath. Searching deeper. Listen, buddy. I don't agree with you at all, but I really, really appreciate your generosity and your willingness to engage on this topic. Micah 6:7 is about an individual. With what shall I come before Yahweh to bow down before the exalted God? Yes, that is true. And I totally agree that there is an element of hyperbole at work here. But again, I keep coming back to this point. The expected answer to all of these questions when they are posed is yes. Yes, this is what Yahweh wants. And the way this works is if the people who are hearing Micah deliver this oracle or reading it have to have a reason to think that Yahweh wants these things in the first place, right? That's how a rhetorical question works. That's how it functions, if it's going to function at all. I don't think it works if everyone looks at this stuff and goes, well, that's dumb. I mean, where is the force of the prophet's statement if that's the way we approach the questions? Listen, guys, I'm getting pretty drunk. I've been doing this for more than 3 hours, which is more than I've ever done on a live stream. Certainly my own live streams. I'm gonna get out of here, and I'm gonna go and turn on Toast to Toast. I encourage you to go check out the nonsense that Apologia and Dave are laughing about over my shoulder. I wanted to mention again, I have channel memberships now. If you're interested in joining, you get cool emojis. If you're interested in supporting my work, you can buy my course through MVP Courses, Real Israelite Religions, Facts on the Ground, and Propaganda in the Bible. The link is in the description. Oh, hey, listen. I got all day for you, Maya. Good to see you. Thanks for showing up. The link for the course is in the description. You can support me on Patreon. Patrons get early access to my videos, plus some special perks. I dropped, like a week ago, a preview of one of the sections of my book that I'm really focusing my efforts on completing right now. And as a result of that, there's not a lot of new video content, I'm afraid. But in lieu of that, my patrons still get snippets of the written word for their enjoyment before publication. Oh, hey. Good to see you, Chrissy. Thanks for showing up. Better late than never. So yes, I just over on my Patreon, I gave I think it's like a 10 or 15 page sample that I titled "Sex in the Garden," and it's all about the Garden of Eden over on my Patreon. And if you're interested in reading that before it shows up in the book, you can support me over there. And while I am focused on completing the book, I have also included a direct link to my PayPal if you want to donate some money there directly. I greatly appreciate it. The more money that I can raise in the short term and provides me more time to finish the book in a timely fashion. So, thanks guys. Thanks for hanging out. I'm sorry that Dr. Josh had to go so early, but I hope, even in his absence, that you all found this valuable and useful. Take care, guys. Have a good night, and I am out of here. If I can ever find my... There we go. I found it. Okay. See you later, guys. Be good. Have a great holiday weekend, however you choose to celebrate it. Later.